Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular land use meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Charlotte County, Florida for May 24, 2022. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present. And if you would please rise and join us in a prayer in the Pledge of Allegiance, today brought to us by Dr. Reverend Brian Stolarczyk with Lutheran Church of the Cross. Good morning, sir.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, in wisdom, King Solomon wrote, "Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and be displeased." Although our Memorial Day observance came out of the ashes of a civil war that took the lives of 600 to 800,000 soldiers from the Union and Confederate armies, it was first called Decoration Day, when surviving families from the North and the South came together, united in their grief and their desire to honor the lives of those who had fallen. May we all continue to learn the lesson from King Solomon and Memorial Day, that we, your children, are not called to rejoice when our fellow citizen stumbles and falls. May we vigorously debate and discuss the priorities of Charlotte County with a shared goal of achieving the best outcomes for the common good. May you, O Lord, mute any voices of malice or deceit that would seek to undermine our shared efforts. And when today's business is done, may we be enabled to walk out of these chambers side by side with a greater appreciation of our shared humanity and dignity as God's children. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Goes on. All kinds of technical problems this morning. All right. Well, Reverend, thank you very much for being here and providing us with that pledge and prayer. We really appreciate that. With that, we're going to go to changes to the agenda. Mr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, we have 5 items. Addition number 1 is R5. That's the Regional Planning Council letter. Change number 1 is adding the Memorial Day 2022 proclamation. Change number 2, COVID update from Department of Health. And the last 2 are deletion number 1 to UB5 on land use, and then deletion number 2 to UA5, also on land use. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, move proclamations.
Second. Motion second.
What was the change number 2?
Sorry, you meant move the changes, correct?
Sorry. Yes, move the changes.
Yes. Okay.
But I'm looking at change number 2, which says proclamations. What you meant, hopefully, to say was it's added to the reports received?
Change number 2, correct.
It says proclamations, but you meant reports received.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So we'll make that amendment on the change, and I'll move the changes, sir.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. You said change number 1, proclamations?
Is correct, but change number 2 says proclamations, and it should say reports
Yes.
received.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all.
I just want to make sure.
Thank you,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, is there opposition to the motion? And hearing no opposition, that passes unanimously. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the proclamations.
So move.
Second.
Motion second, is there opposition to that motion? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. And Commissioner Constance, the honor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. We have, I think, 6 or 7. We have 7. So we'll do the best we can to roll through these. Our first one deals with our code enforcement group. Whereas code enforcement officers and support staff provide for safety, health, and welfare of our citizens through the enforcement of building, zoning, housing, environmental, and other codes and ordinances. And code enforcement officers are often not credited for the jobs that they do in saving lives and improving neighborhoods for the betterment of our community. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, well-trained, and highly reasonable individuals who take their jobs seriously and are proud of their department and the local government within which they serve. And whereas the Florida Association of Code Enforcement has declared the first week of June be set aside by local government to honor and recognize their code enforcement officers. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the week of June 6th through June 10th, 2022 shall be known in all of Charlotte County as Code Enforcement Officers Appreciation Week. And we have Sean Horton. Where's he at? And Gail. And Gail. There you go. Let's put you in the middle. Thank you for everything, guys. Appreciate it. Okay. Our next proclamation has to do with something that the Punta Gorda Rotary developed last year, and it's been phenomenal. Whereas it is one of the responsibilities of the Board of County Commissioners of Charlotte County, Florida, to recognize occasions of outstanding significance, and whereas the Punta Gorda Rotary Club has a long-standing tradition of supporting our community through various service projects that benefit our veterans, our students, our teachers, our healthcare workers, and our first responders, and whereas the Punta Gorda Rotary Club is proud to share our second annual Healing Field of Honor, which will be a visual testament to the many heroes in our community as a representation of 1,000 United States flags is placed at Lashley Park. And whereas the Punta Gorda Rotary Healing Field of Honor will be open to our entire community to enjoy and pay tribute, and it is our sincere hope that all will come to view the spectacular sight throughout Memorial Day weekend. Now therefore be it proclaimed that Memorial Day weekend, May 27th through May 30th, 2022, shall be known in all of Charlotte County as Healing Field of Honor Weekend. And we have Allison Birch. Yeah. So we're inviting everybody. Friday morning is the opening and the dedication, and it'll be there all weekend long, and it is spectacular. Last year they had 500 flags. This year it's going to be 1,000. It's breathtaking. And this next one commemorates Memorial Day. Whereas, of all the important holidays we celebrate during the year, few are more worthy of special observance than Memorial Day. And whereas many citizens of our nation served in peacetime and war, answered our nation's call, and defended the American way of life, and whereas in sacrificing their lives for our country, veterans, servicemen, and servicewomen have passed on to us a legacy of liberty and freedom and a commitment to the cause for which they died to preserve, with each of us must take part in fulfilling, for it is a commitment to our beloved country, the United States of America, because we are all aware that freedom is not free. Now therefore be it proclaimed that May 30th, 2022 shall be known and designated and observed in all of Charlotte County as Memorial Day 2022. All citizens are urged to remember and be thankful for our veterans who made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, and we shall fulfill that living commitment as citizens of this great nation, making America a living memorial to their dedication, courage, and sacrifice. And I have Commissioner Deutsch, who will be accepting.
With the chairman's permission, and mostly because of the young people here, I'm accepting this on behalf of all of the veterans in Charlotte County, and we've got 29,000 of them, but Memorial Day is the day that we remember those who served and lost their lives. And I just want to share with you guys how it got started, because, and it's a brief story, but the story it was originally Decoration Day. When I was your age, it was still called Decoration Day. And it started shortly after the Civil War, when in a small town in the South, some women were putting flowers on the graves of their children and their husbands. And one woman saw a woman go over and do it. She said, "What are you doing there? You put those flowers on the grave of a Union soldier." And the woman said, "Because I know there's a small town in the northern part of our great country where a Union mother is doing the same thing, one of our Confederate fallen. And without internet, without telephones, the very beginning of telegraph, within weeks, every city and small town across the country was doing what we then celebrated as Decoration Day. And we now call Memorial Day, honoring all the men and women who have served and given their lives so we can be in the greatest country in the world and have the freedom and liberty we enjoy. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Deutsch. Okay. Our next proclamation, I have 3 copies, so I have to keep it straight here, is for National Garden Week. Whereas gardeners have a passion for nurturing the beauty and resources of the earth through the planting of seeds, the care of all plants, and the riches of their efforts, and gardeners seek to add beauty, splendor, fragrance, and nutrition to our lives through the growing of herbs, vegetables, foliage, and flowers. And whereas gardeners work to preserve our country's traditional spirit of independence and initiative through innovative and hard work, and gardening furnishes a challenging, productive activity for our citizens, for those just learning as well as those having years of experience. And whereas gardening promotes a healthy lifestyle that lasts a lifetime, helps reduce stress from other areas of our life, teaches that rewards can come from diligent efforts, and whereas gardening enables members of the garden clubs across the nation and the world to make a world of difference in the communities where they reside and work, now therefore be proclaimed that the week of June 5th to June 11th, 2022 shall be known in all of Charlotte County as National Garden Week. And we have Sue Killian, Barbara Jacobson, Connie Ferris, Vita Jones, and Peggy Stanfield. One of you guys. Are there multiple clubs?
Yeah, 3.
Okay, so everybody gets some.
They're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same. They've all got the same signatures. There you go. Do you want to move them over there a little bit? What, you guys want to?
This is for Lemon Bay. Should we go? There's Punta Gorda, Lemon Bay, and
I got 3.
Port Charlotte.
Why don't you guys move down a little bit that way?
We have a
Yeah.
great- Or do you want us all right here?
Is this good?
Is
or-
this fine? Okay.
Well,
There we go.
Don't look at Hank. It's a wedding photo here. Okay, now look at Hank.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And ladies, thank you very much for the plants. We really appreciate that. You've beautified our chambers today. We appreciate that. Okay. Our next proclamation focuses on Summer Camp Month. Whereas the citizens of Charlotte County recognize the vital role that summer and youth camps play in relation to good physical and mental health and enhance the quality of life for all campers, and the citizens of Charlotte County understand the essential role that summer and youth camps play in relation to providing children safe, quality care. And whereas Charlotte County is aware of the contributions made by the recreation industry as represented by the Florida Recreation and Parks Association, the National Recreation and Park Association, and the American Camp Association in developing safe, quality, and desirable programs. And whereas the citizens of Charlotte County recognize the ongoing efforts and commitments to provide the public a quality option for school-age child care while continuing to emphasize recreation. And whereas the citizens of Charlotte County understand the vital importance of offering camp programs to the youth of our community with a foundation based on safety, quality, and Recreation. Now therefore it be proclaimed that the month of June 2020 shall be known in all of Charlotte County as Summer Camp Month. And we have Erin Murphy. Thank you very much. Okay. Our next proclamation addresses women's veterans, and it reads, whereas Women's Veterans Recognition Day was signed into law by President Harry S. Truman on June 12, 1948, and whereas women have served in America's wars and conflicts throughout America's history, serving in vital roles such as soldiers, raising morale, nursing, and spying on the enemy, and whereas in World War II, 140,000 women served in the Women's Army Air Corps performing critical jobs such as military intelligence, cryptography, and parachute rigging, and in 1943 a special unit was formed for all women aviators and became the Women Air Force Service pilots who flew 60,000 miles in 2 years. And whereas today there are almost 2 million women veterans in the United States, Puerto Rico, and territories who are working hard to ensure women veterans are treated with respect and dignity that they have earned and deserve. And whereas the Center for Women's Veterans was established by Congress in 1994 and serves as an advocate for a cultural transformation in recognizing the service and contributions of women veterans and women in the military, and to raise awareness of the responsibility to treat women veterans with dignity and respect. Now therefore be it proclaimed that June 12, 2022 shall be known in all of Charlotte County as Women's Veterans Recognition Day. And I have Jennifer Newman and Katrina McPherson. Okay, and we are down to our last proclamation, which is a little bit personal because I was fortunate enough to work with this teacher, Mr. Pavlicek, at the Punta Gorda Middle School. The kids in his fishing class were very interested in water quality. I wonder why. But they were very astute, they were very bright, they had lots of really good questions. And so I went down there with Brandon Moody and we answered everything that we could about where water quality has been in Charlotte County, where it is today, and where it's going to be. Well, lo and behold, this group went out and won a fishing tournament. So, whereas the Punta Gorda Middle School fishing team, in its first year of existence at the school, and as part of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission high school fishing program, and whereas the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission developed the high school fishing program for students who are interested in learning how to become effective, conservation-minded anglers, and whereas during the fishing tournament, the Punta Gorda Middle School team conducted conservation projects throughout Charlotte County and its waterways in order to protect local wildlife and habitats for future generations, and whereas Punta Gorda Middle School fishing team achieved first place in the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission high school fishing program and will continue working towards conservation efforts in Charlotte County, now therefore be it proclaimed that the month of June 2012 shall be known in all of Charlotte County as Punta Gorda Middle School Fishing Team Month. Gentlemen, congratulations. Mr. Pavlik, you want to come on up? Let me award this to you now, and then I think we'll take some pictures in just a little bit. Here you go, sir. Why don't we take a picture with him here?
Thank you.
Brian, thank
Appreciate
you. And Brian served this nation as a Marine, so we really appreciate your service, sir. That concludes proclamations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Constance. With that, we are going to go to employee recognition. And this is in reference to our ambassador program. Mr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yes, join me in recognizing the graduates of our ambassador program. This is a program that we are proud of. It is right in line with one of the board's strategic focus area goals of increasing line of sight. So they go through a 2-month program, learn about their fellow employees, fellow departments, and we believe it can only help in, serving each other, serving the public. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura from HR to do the honors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, good morning. Today we are recognizing our 15th Employer Ambassador Program graduates. The Employee Ambassador Program was started in 2011. The program's origin is due in part to the employee responses from a strategic area focus survey. This program was developed to improve communications, increase employee knowledge of the organization, foster team spirit, and enhance customer service. Our ambassadors are better prepared to answer questions from citizens, colleagues, and neighbors. They are well informed of the county's programs and services and can respond to inquiries. They have reinforced sense of team spirit and a commitment to providing quality services to all customers and colleagues. With today's class, 393 employees have completed the program and have gained a better understanding of county departments and the overall organization, which benefits customers, the organization, and the public. Congratulations to the 15th class of the Employee Ambassador Program. And when your name is called, please come up to receive your certificate. Okay. Tara Blackson. Maria DePompo. Miguel Galtres. Charlene Franklin. Kemi Gensbro. Cassandra Gant. Susan Gowans.
There we go.
Sorry. Thank you. I got mine already. Oh, she wasn't there. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Susan gets. That's very hard. Liz Hoffman. Katie Luseka. Sam Nichols. Joseph Romanelli. Mary Jane Skipes. Debbie Thibodeau. And Debbie Warner. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All set? I'm all set. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Appreciate everybody putting in the effort. Next, we are going to go to awards and presentations. Commissioner Deutsch will be receiving a check for the William R. Gaines Jr. Memorial Park.
It was about 11 or 12 years ago that Sid Kitson came in and met with the commissioners individually and collectively and began to share a dream with us about a place called Babcock Ranch. I had an opportunity to go out there before a stone was turned. And kid growing up in the Bronx, I had seen cockroach, roaches, rats, stuff like that, but I had never seen an alligator up close. And I can remember I went out to that little place out there and we walked over a bridge, and my gosh, I was surrounded by about 50 alligators. Well, as time passed, Mr. Kitson began to get Babcock Ranch off the ground, and it's becoming a wonderful, incredible, innovative addition to our Charlotte County, and we're very proud of that. And now there's some 4,500 people, I understand, living out there. I've been out there a number of times. The place is amazing, and I'm very pleased. And I'd like to ask Lucy Ann Pierce to come up Luciana is vice president and out at the ranch, and they're presenting us today with a $5,000 check.
This is a heavy check, too.
It is a heavy check.
Wow.
Well, we got the real one first. We do that before we make this up. But we want to thank them, Babcock Ranch, for their involvement and support of our community, and particularly the support of the William R. Gaines Park. Thank you so much. You want the picture here or want us to move over?
One more. Thank you.
You want to see a minute or two? Why don't you just...
Well, absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. It's great to be here. 3 years and 4 months to the day since I've been on the microphone. And absolutely, what a pleasure to be here on behalf of Sid Kitson, Tom Hoban, the partners in Kitson & Partners, and every single teammate in the Kitson & Partners organization on the east and west coast of Florida. We have a number of service members and veterans in our organization. And one thing that's always been true of Babcock and Kitson & Partners is the feeling that we're all in this together, and we should celebrate what we have and continue to give back to our communities. And each and every one of us are very proud and thankful that the Commissioner had extended such an incredible invitation to us to be able to participate in the park. So we're happy to do
I
that.
just want to add, one of the times I was out at Babcock is when you folks donated a house to a disabled veteran. I was there for that event, about 4 years ago now. Yeah. So they do a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your support.
Thank you very much. Great. All right, next we will go to public input on agenda items only. Anyone wishing to speak during this portion of the meeting must fill out a card. And Natalie's got some over there if anybody wants to speak that's not filled a card out just yet. You'll come forward, state your name for the record, and address which items that you choose to speak about today. Time is limited to 3 minutes and shall be directed to the board as a body and not as individual members. I have 3 cards so far. Captain Hubbard, if you'd like to come forward, please. And then I have Suzanne Graham and Susan Dean. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Van Hubbard, and I am a resident of Charlotte County. First, I want to thank you, Commissioners, so much for your dedication, your hard work, and I know that frequently this is a thankless job, and y'all have done a wonderful job taking care of Charlotte County. Impact fees are something that we need to address. Y'all are addressing it. Claire did a phenomenal job with her she and her staff, because I know she didn't do it by herself, did a phenomenal job in the presentation. Though I'm not able to make it to all of the meetings, I do watch you on Charlotte County television. And I mentioned to the ladies in the back, we really need to work on getting the volume up on that so I can hear our broadcasting, because it is a wonderful asset to the community. We need to increase our impact fees as much as we possibly can. Y'all have been through the challenges. I've followed this with you for several years now. Keep up the good work, get this done. And amongst the things that you're trying to address, water quality is one that if it can be worked into infrastructure stuff, it is critical to our sustainability for our economy as well as our quality of life. Anytime I can do anything to help, I'm really willing and able, and thank y'all very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Next, Suzanne Graham, also speaking to R4.
Good morning, Commissioners. Suzanne Graham, Chairman, Charlotte DeSoto Building Industry Association, Governmental Affairs. Speaking on impact fees, and as you all know, we don't like them. In October of 2021, in the extraordinary circumstances presentation, it was stated that the working relationship that the county and the building industry have, and that staff was confident that both entities could work together to come to an agreement on rates. We did compromise based on the information we had at that time. We all agreed earlier that year on a number that was higher than what the cap rate was that was in the new legislation. And in December, we all agreed to compromise. In addition, numerous commissioners stated throughout last year that no one wanted to go to 100%. How shocked we were that this came up again, and that some of the commissioners that stated from the dais that they would not raise to 100% are now going back on their word. In addition, after reviewing the documents from October, when extraordinary circumstances were first deemed necessary to the information in today's packet, I'm not seeing any additional extraordinary circumstances above and beyond what was presented in December at the public hearing meeting. Even though no precedent has been set, I throw caution to the wind due to this being new impact fee statute and that by implementing 2 extraordinary circumstances in less than 6 months, that it could be challenged. What new data is being shown that wasn't presented in October, November, or December of 2021? Also, if there are capital improvement projects that are now necessary, then is the Duncan study that was adopted in 2021 really the most recent data? Medium home prices have gone up, meaning more property taxes. You haven't given the new implementation time to take effect. We will be requesting the following items via public records request to get a better understanding of where monies have been allocated. Total amount collected from the 2014 Charlotte County sales tax and how the money was allocated. Total amount of money collected for impact fees from 2014 to present, which projects the monies were allocated to. All capital improvement projects built from 2014 to present and allocation of where the monies came from. Charlotte County Sheriff's Office approved budget versus actual from the year 2014 to present. Charlotte County Fire EMS approved budget versus actual for each year from 2014 to present. And list of new projects needed in Charlotte County for the next 5 years and budget for each project. This has been the most volatile time in the building industry. Price increases weekly, while many builders hold on to their passion of trying to build the American dream and keep it affordable. We ask you to do your due diligence, get all this information, and help our local residents to be able to live in our paradise. We are not a bargain basement. We are in paradise. We ask you to do your due diligence and not do anything until you have all the information. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Dean. She is speaking to F6.
Good morning. I also think that our county is a great county. I moved here from St. Petersburg 34 years ago. I love it here. I made copies of what my...
Okay, he'll take that for you.
Now, my comments are based on what I read in the newspaper article yesterday about the odors on Kings Highway, Midway, and Olean. So I'm just going to read from this, if you don't mind. My name is Susan Dean. I live 3 blocks west of Kings Highway and 3 blocks north of Olean Boulevard. After a few months of smelling the odor while driving on Kings Highway and a few calls to CCU, Public Works, and Charlotte County Health Department, I opened my sliding glass door and was smacked in the face with the same odor I had been smelling on Kings Highway. I sent an email to Commissioner Teseo that day. He replied the very next day, 12/4/21. Commissioner Teseo, thank you for your quick response and concern for this matter. He contacted Caroline Winnell at CCU. Her response to the cause was the new 48-inch pipes along the new gravity line system. They were aware of the problem and were working on it. The rest of my statement is in the form of questions, which I realize may not be able to be answered at this time. So I will just read it as a statement so I can stay within my 3 to 5 minutes talk time. All quotes are from Dave Watson in Monday, 5/23/22 Sun News article. Number 1, if the H2S sewer gases are leaking from the gravity line sewer system, what will stop, quote, the combination of chemicals, including hydrogen peroxide, from leaking into the air we are breathing? 2, can we get full disclosure of exactly what these chemicals are that are already being injected into 2 lift stations? Both are near schools. One is directly across from Port Charlotte Middle School, and can we get full disclosure of any future chemicals being used? 3, if this proves to be a sewer system that cannot properly function without chemical injections to control the odors, can the 48-inch pipes be converted to the forced main system, quote, all the way back to the plant that obviously worked for many years in Charlotte County? If this is an option, will this even help? It sounds like a lot more sewage is heading to the Eastport Reclamation Center on Loveland Boulevard. Eastport is already collecting, quote, quite a majority of the flows for Mid-County into the Midway system. 4, can this new gravity line system sustain the growth that Charlotte County has coming its way? 5, are there any other treatment facilities having this issue? With COVID-19 particles being found in sewage systems across the country, are they being released through the leaking system here or are the droplets of reclaimed water being used in the county?
I'm sorry, Ms. Dean, your time is up, but we do have all your
Okay.
questions, and we will
That
make
was
sure.
just a little bit more.
And
I got
Commissioner
it all.
Sale's got your contact as well, as we have your
Yes.
email up here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Sorry about that. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, I see no one rising at this point. So with that, I will go to Commissioner Doherty on consent.
Nothing this morning, sir.
Commissioner Constance.
Nothing. I'm sure he's going to pull F6, right? No?
No.
Okay, all right.
We
All
can-
right, nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Sale? Okay. Commissioner Deutsch? I have nothing. I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So move, sir.
Second.
Motion and second. I do have one correction that I needed to point out on N4. It says under project location that, and this is for the beach renourishment program, it says that in addition to R1 to R21.2 and R28 to R40.5 along the Atlantic Ocean, I believe that's on the other side of the state. So I think it needs to say the Gulf of Mexico. So I just need to correct that, and I've got it highlighted on here if you need it.
Hey, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I just want to I didn't want to pull the item, but I guess I'll make a comment about F6 and the hydrogen sulfide. I appreciate the email and your concern, not just from you, but from other constituents in the area. It's been an ongoing issue, and the county's been working on it, trying to come up with a chemical injection solution that will mitigate the odor. These things do happen in sewer line. It's a new system put into service. So as we go through these learning curves, I'm hoping that, staff with this project being awarded will again resolve that issue in the coming month or two. And hopefully we won't be getting those emails anymore. But I think it's part of the growing pains, and, with a system that size, it's just unfortunate that this happened this way. But I appreciate you coming in today and making yourself heard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I can tell you, I live catty corner from a house that has a lift station behind it. And for a period of time, years ago, they experienced some pretty strong odors, which has since been taken care of. But unfortunately, it does happen at times.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if it's in order, I will accept your amendment to N4.
Good, thank you. All right. Any further discussions? Hearing none, is there any opposition to the motion? And hearing no opposition, consent agenda passes in its entirety. And we will go to our regular agenda. I was zipped right past it. Mr. Fuller. And then, Mr. McBride, I'll take you next. I'll go ahead and take that out of order.
Good morning, Commissioners. Patrick Fuller, Emergency Management, for the record. Thank you for having me this morning. Moving into the seasonal outlook, as you know, hurricane season for the Atlantic runs from June 1st to November 30th. As of last year, the National Hurricane Center began issuing regular advisories as early as May 15th, so we're already within that window. So far, there has been no national hurricane advisories for any systems. But as you probably imagine, this is for the 7th year in a row being predicted as another above average year. There's several factors for that. Predominantly the persistence of El Nino conditions in the Pacific. As you know, an El Nino, the opposite, would create wind shear that would limit the development of storms. We're not seeing that. We're seeing the opposite, reduced wind shear. So due to that and the position and strength of the Bermuda or Azores high, which pushes storms further to the west, they are predicting another above average season. Our message continues to be it only takes one, as we try to remind our residents that 1992 was considered an extremely below average season, and that's the season we had the record-breaking Hurricane Andrew hit Miami-Dade County. So the predictions, the National Hurricane Center will actually be issuing their predictions today, but the seasonal averages, which were updated last year, moving from 1991 to 2020, were increased up to 14 average named storms per year, 7 of those being hurricanes, 3 of which major. Colorado State, who's the industry standard, and Storm Geo, our contracted meteorology service, are both predicting above average years. I'm assuming that we will see a very similar prediction from the National Hurricane Center released this year. We continue to have our 4 shelters, being Kingsway Elementary School, Liberty Elementary School, Neil Armstrong, and Harold Avenue Rec Center. Total capacity of those for planning purposes is around the neighborhood of 4,500 individuals. As you remember, during COVID, we had to mitigate down and scale that back based on spacing. We still have those plans. We can initiate it if needed, but current conditions do not warrant additional spacing. What are we doing in emergency management? We have numerous activities. As it stands today, we have 607 individuals registered on our special needs registry. Yesterday, we began our annual verification where we call down and contact each one of these individuals, verify that they still remain residents of Charlotte County, see if they've had any conditions that have changed, and advise them on what the steps would be if we had to activate the special needs shelter. Last week, we conducted the special needs shelter drill at our special needs shelter. That was in combination with Community Services and Public Works, mobilizing all these special needs equipment, getting a good time on how long it takes to deploy and set up the shelter. Additionally, our Florida Department of Health and Charlotte County personnel who staff that shelter ran through several of their functional activities when they actually staff it and run it. Annually, we review the healthcare facility plans. Those include assisted living facilities, skilled nursing facilities, hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, and adult daycares. Each year they're required to submit those plans to us, and we review those, and we're in the midst of that currently. Last night, we were at Centennial Park conducting our shelter manager and staff training. Those are our county employees who, in the time of need, will staff our shelters. They were run through the paces of an orientation and run through several of the things to expect when and if they have to staff a shelter. Over the last several years, we've been improving our shelter logistics by not only enhancing the supply cache we have to include functional need type items, which are walkers, canes, commodes, those types of things, but just the ability to quickly deploy shelter equipment when needed. This July, we will be holding our EOC exercise, and this year we are going to be concentrating on the 7 days post-landfall. Several of the past years, we've focused on the time leading up to a landfalling storm. This year, we're going to focus on post-landfall activities. And again, we continue to monitor the pandemic conditions and will adjust if necessary. And this year, for the first time in several years, we've actually gotten back into the normal rhythm and frequency of outreach. Our outreach message remains the same: know your risk. So know the zone in which you live in, know your home. Make a plan. We're reminding residents that the governor signed the sales tax holiday from May 28th to June 10th, and that's the time, and now's the time to go ahead and build those kits if you don't already have a kit in place. Know where you're going to go if you have to evacuate. Reminding residents that shelter should be your last option, and stay informed by leveraging Alert Charlotte. One of the challenges we've seen, everyone's aware that we've had numerous new residents to our area and in the entire state for that matter. Many of those residents probably never experiencing a hurricane season before. So I did an expo over the weekend at the Port Charlotte Town Center Mall and did a very informal survey, but roughly half of those folks are new to the area within the last 4 years, meaning they never went through Irma. So getting that message to new folks, and then also reminding people who have been here for quite a while that no two storms are the same. Hurricane Charley is very different from a Hurricane Michael, and to pay attention. With that, I stand ready for any questions.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick, thank you for all the hard work every year, and you and your staff do. A little bit of a deeper dive on the special needs registry. So we have the names on the list. Do we do more than that? Do we sort of have because it's extensive work to plan out what is the plan for all 607 of those folks? Do you actually drill it with the individuals, or is there something that you can do ahead of time to give everybody sort of, what to do, a white paper, so that when you put the word out and things are activated, they kind of know who to contact, what to do, where to go, those types of things?
Yes, Commissioner. In the 607 number may be a little misleading. Some of those folks are just transportation dependent and are better served in the general population shelter. Probably around 300, 350 are actually truly special needs. During this call down that we do this month or this week, we're contacting those individuals. We verify what their conditions are. If they have some condition that now moves them from general population into special needs, they're done so. The Department of Health works with us to determine their eligibility. But we also run down the scenario of, okay, we're opening a shelter. Here's what you can expect. You'll receive a call within 24 hours. We'll let you know if you're being picked up, when to expect Charlotte County Transit to come pick you up, what items you need to bring with you, and what conditions to expect in the shelter. So, if you have dietary concerns that we're not able to accommodate, certainly bring those items. If you have bedding that you want to have above and beyond what we can provide you from the special needs shelter, those are the types of things you need. And we stand ready to answer any questions they have. It's a time of anxiety, obviously, if we have to open the special needs shelter, so we try to reassure them that they can reach out to us at any time and we can answer those questions.
Okay, thank you. And then in preparation, there can be other alternatives to a shelter. So if it's 5 or 7 days out, maybe they actually have someplace they can go. So do we have those scenarios identified? And also, how much coordination are you doing with Joe Pepe, our Health Department Director? Because obviously, within the 607, maybe there's 300 that are more specific, and then maybe there's, I'm going to throw it out, 20 or 30 that are respirator dependent or whatever that number is, but there are certain levels of intensity. And so do you have those names segregated out, because that's the real focus for the heavy lift? And maybe those are the folks that get out sooner and don't even go to a shelter, but actually get displaced temporarily.
When we're doing our case management with them, working hand in hand with Joe, I've had the fortunate opportunity to work much closer with him than I ever realized.
True.
But it is a case-by-case basis. We go through, we know which patients have what conditions, oxygen dependent being the primary purpose for being in the shelter. But we encourage them, just like our regular residents, shelter should be your last option. Work with your caregivers, work with your physicians, determine a plan. If you can leave the area, that's, in a lot of cases, the best option. But we work through that, and Joe's team does a great job of giving them options and walking them through it.
Very good. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. I will remind people in the construction world that keep your eyes open during this time of year. Plan ahead. Don't wait till the last minute to clean your job sites up. If you don't have a plan, I suggest you create one. And if you want a copy of an idea of a plan, I'm happy to share mine.
Mr. Chair, I'm glad you brought that up, because I got a very stressed phone call from a constituent, I think before Irma was coming, that the house across the way being built had a whole bunch of roofing shingles just sitting on the roof.
Yeah.
He says, well, what are they going to do about that? I said, well, they got to get them down. So
Yeah, when Charlie was coming, there was a house, I worked for another builder at the time, and there was a house in Grassy Point, literally the week before, got loaded with tiles next to Dr. Greenberg.
Oh my gosh.
So, yes.
Yeah, we've watched the chaos that all this re-roofing is done to the insurance industry, but one of the benefits is that Charlotte County has an abundant amount of new roofs that are nailed to the latest code, new underlayment, and yeah, we got to see a hand raising over there. So hopefully, the benefits of that is when these storms hit, that the roofs are now up to code and they'll remain intact.
Well, and you hit on something. The thing that's important about the underlayment now is you have to have a secondary waterproofing layer.
Right.
So
Peel and stick.
when shingles get torn off of a roof, if you've got the peel and stick down, you're not going to get the water damage that you would unless your roof peels, the plywood peels off or something. So some type of penetration. So yeah, it is a good, that part of it is good. I will agree to that. So anyway. Very good. With that, I'm going to go to R3 and WCIND and bring Mr. McBride up, and then we'll go to the Water Authority agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Justin McBride, Executive Director of the West Coast Inland Navigation District. For the record, the West Coast Inland Navigation District has a board meeting the morning of June 9th, 10 a.m. at the Venice Police Station. I'll go down the agenda. I'm going to start at the consent agenda. Typical business, approval of minutes, approval of invoices. Manatee County is also requesting $2.5 million from their CNIF request to rehab a boat ramp. They have the funds, so I don't expect that there would be an issue with that. We have two agency presentations. First, Senior Friendship Centers. The district owns a piece of property in Sarasota County where we have a consent to use agreement with the Senior Friendship Centers. I won't go into what they do, but it's been a while since that we've had an update on what they do for the community, and so we're bringing them in because we're redoing that consent to use agreement and that easement to let the board know that how they're serving the community and how WCIND is playing a role in that. And then also our auditors are presenting our annual audit for the previous year. Under the administrative agenda, per statutory requirements, the board has to accept the audit from the auditor, and then we present that and process it to the state of Florida. We will be having a discussion under our Operations Center funding. We were unsuccessful in our request to the state for Operations Center funding, so we need to find a path forward. Do we try again next year? Do we self-fund? Do we do half and half? Do we have a bake sale? So we have options. Then also, we'll be having our preliminary budget discussion. This is the first of 3 discussions that we'll be having. This is very, very preliminary. This is where the board sets the preliminary millage rate. They can always go back from that, but they can't go above what they decide at this meeting. And then finally, they will approve the license agreement with the Senior Friendship Centers to continue to move forward with that. Under old business, we'll be giving a derelict vessel update on the district's involvement with derelict vessel removals. We don't have any new business at this time. Under our WCIND Council report, she'll be discussing the state action dissolving the Reedy Creek Special District. That is of particular importance to us because if you look at what the state government did, the district was formed before 1948. So we were close to being in that group that was dissolved. However, the district was recodified in 1994. So that is how we did not get into that group of 5, I think it was 5 or 6 special districts that were dissolved. But she will talk about how that may or may not impact us, things like that. And then it is time for my annual evaluation. She will be presenting that, and the board will have that discussion. I have my typical executive director's report, and if there are any commissioner items, and then public comment. I stand available for questions.
Very good. Any questions?
Couple quick things. So I look forward to a healthy discussion about the Operations Center funding because I'm still of the opinion that we should head to Tallahassee, and as the years go by, we're going to get better and better opportunities to bring that funding down, and maybe there is a hybrid to start a little bit early and then draw the funds in as we're doing construction to supplant the money. So, I'm really hopeful for that. With regard to derelict vessel update, can you expand a little bit on the pilot project that Sarasota is doing to preempt an issue? Because we had that discussion, and you'll do it better justice than I did.
Sure. So what we've piloted in Sarasota County is what we call a rapid removal. It is not a removal of derelict vessels. It is not a removal of abandoned vessels. If you look at the derelict vessel statute, there are certain keys that a vessel has to hit. One of the things that it does not touch are vessels on the beach. So if a vessel lands on the beach, it is not a hindrance to navigation. If it's not leaking oil, it's not environmental in the eyes of the state. But in our talking with law enforcement in Sarasota County, it was an issue with public safety, health, and welfare. We said we cannot leave a boat beached on the beach. It's a public hazard. So we worked with Sarasota County to create a change in their Parks and Rec code that if a boat gets on the beach, we can remove it and anchor it somewhere safely until such time it can be worked by law enforcement as derelict or abandoned. So we've piloted that program, and for whatever reason in the 4-county area, the majority of the vessels that end up on the beach happen to be in Sarasota County. So we've employed it 4 or 5 times. And we also have used it in some storm areas. If there's an anchorage and a vessel comes loose from its anchorage, we can have the ability to, under that county ordinance, to go out and re-anchor a vessel, not remove it, not destroy it, but just secure it so it doesn't become a problem. But then we can follow with law enforcement later and evaluate it if it is derelict or abandoned and begin that process.
And I think that's very valuable that you can do that interdiction. If a boat gets loose, well, there's nothing we can do. No, there is. If we set it up correctly, then somebody can go and, just get a tether on it and then deal with it so that it doesn't run into a bridge or run aground or, and people, boaters hopefully are good stewards of the waterways and they can call those things in, and we would have a mechanism. We get that message out there, and then there's a mechanism to intervene prior to a point where it now becomes aground and it's derelict, and now we got to go through that whole process.
Right, and there are, to be clear, there are instances in state statute that law enforcement is allowed to relocate and move vessels if they're hazardous navigation and things like that. So there is some existing verbiage in state statute that allows that. We just created the program with where we have a vendor that we have pre-qualified rates and we've already negotiated, and we can make that happen.
Well, we've been doing better. Like in the last probably 3 weeks, some of the boats that have been ready to be removed have actually gotten removed. So it's been looking better.
I know your staff works really hard. We're in contact with them weekly, and we remove the boats that they're unable to, just in timing and things like that. So it's a partnership. But we have been talking with your staff about moving that pilot project down here.
Very good. Well, appreciate all the hard work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Sale?
Has anybody proposed or introduced new legislation or language to streamline the derelict vessel removal process?
There was some that was introduced last year, and there were some changes to the state statute. And from our experience, we have found that it has done what it was intended. It's not going to be a fast process. And I say that because at its base core, declaring a vessel derelict is the government seizing personal private property. So there is a constitutional issue, and there are timelines, and they have gotten those timelines from a legal, I'm not a lawyer, they've gotten those timelines down as short as they can, and there is a process, and if law enforcement and those in charge of that are following that process, it is, as I feel, as timely as it can be at this point.
And here's my rub. So part of your personal property rights is you have to be responsible for your personal property, right? If the boat's on your property, you do what you want with it. But once you go out into the general waters and you become a hazard for the rest of the community, that's the rub for me. At some point, yeah, you have your rights, but we shouldn't have to wait 90 days or 120 days to notify and do things. There's an accident on the street with your car. It gets towed immediately because it's a hazard. So the public rights away. Just like a boat is a hazard when it sits out there in the public waters. So what's the difference?
I don't disagree. I can't answer that question fully, but I can tell you that the time of notification is 21 days.
Well, there's notification, you have to have a response, and then there's time before you can do anything. I'm just saying, we have a problem here. It seems to be an ongoing problem, and it sounds like there was some tinkering with the statutes last year. But, I don't know if we just, during our legislative process here, come up with something that's even quicker. Because I think there's a nexus with public safety and your rights, but also your rights cannot, interfere with other people's rights. So when you create a hazard, and it's an abandoned vessel, did you technically abandon your rights? So now it's incumbent upon government to reinforce your rights that you abandoned by abandoning your vessel. They didn't leave a note. It didn't break and they called somebody immediately, hey, that's my boat. It's broke. I'm getting out. Give me a week or two. I'm moving it. They're abandoned. And we spend most of the time tracking down the owners. So it just seems like one of those legacy issues. Maybe we address it and tackle it even harder.
I agree, and I share your frustration. We recently did a tally. We've removed over 100 boats in the last 4 years. So it is a statewide problem. I think the questions that you have, would be best posed. I know that you are all having a work session, and I've personally spoken to the area captain and the captain in charge of derelict vessels for the Southwest region. I believe one or both of them will be there. Because FWC is really in the driver's seat when it comes to that legislation. I think those questions, comments, and frustrations brought to them would be great, and they may be able to chart a path forward.
Well, that's probably something, if this board wants to engage in that, we can work on some type of policy proposal that's coherent and that, we can present to the appropriate people.
Yes.
Because as Charlotte County and Florida grows in general, there's going to be more boaters. And these derelict vessels are going to create more of a hazard for all the new people coming to enjoy our water and, quality of life in Charlotte County.
And to put it in perspective, since I deal with all 4 of the counties, you are extremely lucky in that you really don't have many to deal with. Lee County and Manatee County I'd say Lee County has 4 to 5 times the number.
Yeah, well, and that's where this legislative potential language, can be regional in nature. We talk to all our friends in the region, and maybe we have one voice that, hey, we need to streamline this. It needs to be better. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Deutsch.
We spent some time talking to Mrs. Knowlton and Hector about this the other day. Part of it's in terminology, but I've been dealing with this since basic training when I got educated. And part of the problem is, and we've updated this to a large degree, there are still a lot of old marine laws and regulations on the books. I won't go through what we went through at our one-on-ones the other day. A lot of them have been updated. A lot of them are still there. And, you know, it's unfortunate. We use the term abandoned, and really we should use the term maybe more like unknown, because the reality is all those boats aren't abandoned. And if a boat is documented, essentially a lot of our responsibility and authority is usurped because it's covered by federal guidelines, and then the state overrides that, and we're sort of at the bottom of a totem pole in terms of making our decisions. And part of the process is we have to determine and make extensive efforts to determine the ownership of a vessel. Once we determine the ownership of the vessel or track it back, then we have to make, by law, an effort to contact that owner. There are extraordinary, oh God, bad term to use today. There are circumstances where if the vessel is on a sensitive area and it's an environmental hazard because of where it is, we sometimes can usurp that and move a little quicker. And if there is fuel on the vessel and it's leaking, that's another issue. If it's in the channel, we can also get around. There's so many facets to this, Joe. It's amazing. And I've been on all ends of this, starting with the Coast Guard. And the reality is, I believe Florida has more boats than any other state in the United States. So I think we're ahead of California, actually. We've got an awful lot of vessels here, and an awful lot of people have the boats. Some are, unfortunately, stolen, some are misplaced, some are given up, some are left as derelict, some literally are abandoned. But it's a long, lengthy process, and it's something that I know I got involved with it on WCIND, and the state chipped in and helped us. But it's going to be a challenge, and it's not something that we're going to deal with easy. I don't know how you feel about some of the things I share, because we talked about them years ago on WCIND. But
you're not inaccurate, but do know that in working with the counties, we always keep an eye to see, well, where can we improve?
And it is frustrating, and I'll add, we have a good team. We have the support of WCIND through the state grant and the assistance. We're able to move some vessels that we can't. The sheriff's office and they work hand in hand with Roger DePura, and we do the best we can, Joe. But it's really, we're restrained by what we can do. That's the problem. We're tied in and there's some things we can't even change at the state level. Thanks. I just wanted to share that because it frustrates all of us.
Thank you. I don't know, Commissioner Constance was back in the queue, but he left.
Well, I would just say, Mr.
There he is.
I would say, Commissioner Deutsch, Commissioner Deutsch, that's why I propose we change the law.
See, we can't change some of it.
Yeah, Commissioner Constance?
So, thank you, sir. Justin, I'm glad you brought up the workshop. Did you get an invitation? And if not, can we make sure he's there?
Oh, I will be there.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just think that's critically important.
Bring in the donuts.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And any other staff you think is appropriate to add information?
I'm sorry?
Any other staff that you think is appropriate to add information, bring them along.
Yeah, I've reached out to Tina and vice versa, and we're working together.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Watson, we are going to the Water Authority agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Watson, Interim Director, Charlotte County Utilities. I'm going to go through the highlights of the Water Authority agenda, both the regular meeting and the workshop. Starting with consent agenda, some of the highlights, the mid-year financial report for fiscal year 2022 and the semi-annual investment report for 2022. They'll be awarding a sludge hauling contract to DM Construction, ratify execution of the water treatment chemical contract, and award a belt filter press rehabilitation contract. Under the regular agenda, they have the water supply conditions, the strategic plan update, the 5-year capital improvements plan, and the 20-year capital needs assessment for approval, the water treatment facility expansion alternatives, owner's agent selection and professional services contract, and the staff presentation on progressive design build process. Under the routine status reports, they have the hydrologic conditions report, an update on Reservoir Number 3 project preliminary design, update on the Reservoir 3 preliminary engineering and third-party review, update on integrated loop system Phase 2B, update on the integrated loop system Phase 3C, the DeSoto Booster Pumping Station project, partially treated water aquifer storage and recovery project, and the Peace River Basin report. There are 2 items on the workshop agenda. Item number 1 is the master water supply contract, discussion of the approved revisions. And item 2 is the master water supply contract, future water supply procedure. And questions, comments?
A lot to do.
A
A lot, big agenda. Go ahead.
Thank you. Where to begin? So I guess we'll start with the regular agenda. And I think in talking with Mr. Coates yesterday, I guess I want to, looking at the strategic plan, I think there's a lot of things that, and you're going to talk about it in the workshop session, I think, as well, in a way, because I guess I have to have an understanding of, what are we doing as far as capacity. And there are some very interesting charts in here that show what our needs are. First of all, it's interesting that we're like at 12, our peak month lately was 12 million gallons a day. So we're averaging probably 11 and a quarter or something like that. But 16, which was a crazy number 15 years ago or whenever, is now, boy, we're glad we have that.
3/4 of the way there at least once.
Yeah, and we don't want to be, once you get like 80%, you want to make sure you have more capacity. So what's interesting, though, is if you look at the chart, and I don't know if you can bring it up, but there's our needs assessment, and even looking forward at the next reservoir, which is not going to be, Reservoir 3 is going to be 1.5 times the size, it looks like, of Reservoir 2. But even with that size, we're going to have to look at increasing the finishing capacity. So right now we can do about 51 million gallons a day, and what's being proposed to deal with that extra water is another 24 million gallons a day. So increasing finishing capacity by 50% for more, that's great. But if you look, Manatee, who had said for years when John Chappie was there, hey, we're not going to need any water, we're fine. We've got Lake Manatee, we're all set. Then recently, maybe within like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, said, we think we may need some water by 2035. Well, now they're saying, nah, we're not going to need it. That's their latest. And maybe 2037, 2038. Well, that's when all of this new stuff's going to come online. So the next iteration of what do we do now, what's the next expansion, that's going to get very, very, very expensive. And I don't want to see the rest of us having to pay for, that next piece if we don't need any. Now, I'm being told we're going to probably have some need out to 2042 or something like that after this next. So we got to kind of be careful how things stage out. But, I guess it's going to come down to who's going to be part of that next part, because if there's no more land for a reservoir, well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, well, we're talking about desalination. That's really the next step. So then, is that done at the plant, or is that pod desalination facilities that are just closer? Why transmit it if you're just going to create the capacity? So I just want us to have this discussion now, because you're going to be sitting at that workshop table. You're going to probably be in the audience, but I'm very concerned, because I want to see what does that roll out to, because now that's not cheap, but maybe technologies improve, it gets better. But I guess my caution is if more gets done to be able to finish more water at the facility, the capacity of the pipes is the capacity of the pipes. If you have to build more straws to suck that water out, that's going to be very expensive. And we've already paid for our capacity. We've already got our stuff in the ground. So if they need more stuff going on, it's going to be one customer, even though they're a member, that's going to determine, that's big money. And I think we also, just talking about our water strategy here, I think we need to be thinking about our South County strategy. I think it's pretty good. I think we can expand that. We're doing that, but we're going to be really expanding our South County facility, our burn store facility, and then the city's got the RO plant. So I think in combination, we probably have a decent amount of capacity we can build upon. We're only using 500,000 gallons a day in burn store. We got a permit for 3. We probably could go a lot bigger if we decided. And then is there a strategy for ever using those wells at Babcock? And do we bring that water south instead of across and try to maybe connect Babcock to our system, which makes more sense, gives them redundancy. I've talked about this years ago, but it gives them redundancy if they have an issue with their aquifer system, and also if we have a problem in our plant, we can get our water down through them and bring it over. So I think we need to, as we're growing and we're talking about being able to make sure we have capacity, we got to start really thinking about those strategies, because we don't really have any other sources of water other than, I guess, we would have to be thinking about desalination plants in West County and Mid County eventually, if that came to fruition. But I just wanted to lay that out, because if anybody else wants to discuss, let's do that, because then I want to talk about that workshop.
Well, I was just going to say, and I've got Commissioner Say on the queue, is that I brought that very thing up with Babcock Ranch, that they probably want to start looking sooner rather than later about an interconnect.
Absolutely.
As, because as we build these systems out, it's better to be at the front end of the discussion so that it works into the system, I think, more efficiently, hopefully, and cost effectively. But
I brought that up, with the conception of a pipeline at the Tucker's Grade extension. Yes, it's through Cecil Webb, but you can do things environmentally, and then, eventually there's probably going to be a road there, but at least
dirt road through there now.
Right. So I mean, I think that, and it's funny, it's interesting, because that road, if you look on the map, that is the dividing line with Soft Mud and Swift Mud. So we could see funding from both parties. Yeah, you should see. I mean, the line is really, you think the alignment's bad in some of the county roads? It's in Soft Mud, then it's in Swift. It's back and forth. So it makes it an interesting puzzle.
Might benefit us. Commissioner DeSalle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this may be another long view statement, but the board directed staff to workshop Vermont Road in the expansion. So does a pipeline during construction, does that all make sense? Is that part of that conversation? That would bring water from the Babcock area generally to South County. And I don't know what the piping is down there, but, is there someplace off Vermont Road where there's existing piping you can tie into, for water delivery system?
I don't think there's existing piping, but I believe you're correct, because the well fields that we would have permitted are at the very northern extent of the Babcock preserve area, so that I believe that would be the siting of the pipeline anyway, but it's very pricey. I want to say 16 million or 20, it's a big number. Do you remember, Mr. Watson?
We'd be looking at least 20 million for pipe.
Well, like I said,
if
it's in conjunction with a road project, obviously it's further out, but I don't know what the need is for this pipeline. Is it 10, 15 years? Which may coincide with the timing of a potential road expansion or road improvement. As we, try to seek money with FDOT, other grant money, it's the old saying, get the work done while the ditch is open.
Right.
This may be a candidate to throw that in the mix, and maybe it will help us somehow get funding. I don't know. You start tying these infrastructure improvements, grant money, the road, we can get partners on this thing, it may make sense.
Well, and if you're piping clean, fresh water along Vermont Road, where the water in the wells out there is very salty, it may change, I don't know if they're going to do agriculture, but it certainly will spur development, because now you're going to have an opportunity for folks to actually, work in a system that makes sense.
And you had a comment about reservoir. Have we run out of siting space for another reservoir, like a future reservoir?
I think there was a thought of taking the single square mile and making another one, and maybe there could be a third one. And then they looked at it, and then I believe I'm going to defer to Commissioner Doherty. He knows.
The problem with the Peace River site out there are wetlands. A lot of environmentally sensitive land. They had to do a lot of wetland mitigation to do the second reservoir, the 6 billion gallon one that's out there right now. To try to get $9 billion, it's going to be tricky too, because there's different jurisdictional boundaries relative to the Peace River and Myakka River as far as, and those mitigation requirements vary depending on what basin you're in. So it's going to be very, very expensive too to do the wetland mitigation. But that's about all we're going to be able to get is, I believe, Dave, is that extra $9 billion out there at that site. So storage becomes, at that piece of property becomes, going any further, it becomes a problem.
Well, has the authority directed staff to look at other potential possibilities for property generally in that area?
Right now, they were looking at all kinds of opportunities with the adjacent property, Commissioner Constance, Orange Hammock years ago, and that fell through. So, but anyways, at this point, anyways, they're focused right now on just trying to get this Reservoir 3 designed and constructed. But obviously, to move on in the future and look further down the road is logical. It's going to have to be done. But right now, all hands on deck, just trying to figure out this one, because right now, as I see it, my opinion, we're looking at a $400 million capital improvements project for the authority, the largest that they've ever had. And if we're fortunate, and I still question that, I got a big question mark, if we're fortunate to get the historic cooperative funding from Southwest Florida Water Management District at 50%, which is $200 million, we still have to divvy up the other $200 million. I'm just throwing that number out. The official estimates aren't that high yet. But when you add in inflation and everything else, I'm hoping it's only $400 million. And so we've got a lot of work to do just figuring this one out right now. But I appreciate you bringing it up, Commissioner Constance. It's long-term. And Manatee, I mean, Manatee County's been the wild card from the get-go. They're a member, but they don't take any water. You know, so and it's a huge supply. So we really have to figure all that out, too.
So the 5-year CIP says $554 million, and the 20-year CNA is almost $1 billion.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So, and that's transmission, water supply projects, and so forth. And I think that was where the table was in the presentation that just kind of shows where the drop-off goes, because we're, I mean, it's a really good document. It's just a question of digging in, and there's a really old picture of the showing the two reservoirs doubled up. So, and I questioned him about that. I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Well, that's the old consultant's picture where it was taking the old image and just duplicating it, but now it's going to be a much bigger kind of inflated boomerang-looking kind of thing."
The only reason when I heard the comment about the reservoir, the reason I brought it up is that, you know, they're not making any new land. So, you know, probably the least cost in a project is going to be land acquisition when you look at the total project cost, right? So, I mean, if I was there, you know, even though the hammock property maybe didn't work out, I would certainly have my eyes and ears open looking for a candidate for property in the general area that would work and try to lock something up, because, you know, you look at how Florida's growing, you know, while for Manatee it may not be an issue now, but, you know, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you know, it'd be nice to have an inventory, a piece of property that's bought and paid for, and it's there, and you've got it, and you can, you know, when the time is right, you can do what you need to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Doherty?
I was just going to say the other facet of our storage out there is aquifer storage and recovery, ASR wells. The problem with those right now is you have to put treated water because of the federal requirements, treated water down there, and then you pull it out and retreat it again. If we can change federal law, and that's what I brought up one time, on a future trip to D.C., if we have an opportunity to get an audience with EPA, I mean, we need, along with the 16-county coalition folks, we're all talking about that relative to storage for Lake Okeechobee, the water coming down from the Kissimmee. We've got to figure out a cheaper way to do this. And when you're putting it down into an aquifer like the Floridan, it's not really high-quality water. I mean, you're putting really good potable water down there and stuff that's questionable, and then bringing it out and retreating again. We've got to figure out a better way to do it. And so anyways, but that's $6 billion. I believe actually we're documented. They reported it something like $8 or $9 billion out at the plant, total storage. But the usable, in my opinion, is only probably $5 or $6 billion. Well, a few million less.
The ASR you're talking about? Yeah. Yeah. I think they showed it at 8-point-something billion right now.
But my opinion, it's the usable is actually less than that, probably about 5 or 6.
Mr. Constance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and so our permit at Babcock I need you to dust off this fact, but how many million gallons a day do we have there?
I'm going to say it's under 5 million a day. At our next quarterly update, you're going to be hearing the water master plan, and population projections and water alternatives are also going to be part of that update. So you'll be hearing about all of our, the Charlotte County portion of that in July.
So I'd like to know, what the limits of that permit are, when it expires, how many renewals we might have on it, and then is there a way to expand that permit to more? Because it's got to make sense. If we're going to spend $20 million at some point to put a pipeline or more, and it starts to make sense, we got to be able to move enough water. What's the capacity of that pipeline? Whether it's 36 or whatever the number is, what makes sense for putting it in to make it match up, and then how many years do we have that for? Because we certainly can't make that expenditure, and then the permit runs out and you've got a dead pipeline. One of the good things, though, is that about 3 or 4 years ago, instead of going back and getting a 30 million gallon a day permit for 30 years on the Peace River, we did 254 million. So I don't know, because I think I was sitting on the board at the time, and I asked the question. I said, "What are we getting?" And they said, "We're 30. That's plenty." So what's the maximum we can get? Whispers, whispers, whispers. And well, 250. So let's go for that. We're not getting any smaller. We're going to keep growing. And there was a little bit of rumbling, and we had some issues with Polk County, but eventually we worked things out, and we're in really good shape. So that's one of those things where you got to be looking ahead, and if you don't ask, you won't know whether you can get it or not. So that was a good move. But yeah, I'm trying to find it. There's a really good chart that kind of shows everybody's needs here. All right, and then the next thing, Mr. Chair, is just this master water supply contract. There are things in here that are basic that have me a little bit concerned, like even under definitions where it talks about the authority, and so the definition of the authority is the authority board. Authority board definition, the authority's governing body. Well, it really should say governing body of the 4 member counties and actually lay it out. I mean, there are certain things, there's a lot of red lines in this, a lot of changing of definitions. So I guess what I'm really curious to hear is what is from our staff, what is the way we're going to engage in this process? So this is being presented to us today. Our representative is going to meet in the workshop scenario. Are they looking for approval, or is this, are we approving this to go forward now, or is this is our first look? Ms. Knowlton, have you had a chance to review this document?
I have reviewed it, and I reviewed it it was discussed during the professional staff meeting. It's my understanding there will be a follow-up discussion with the attorneys. So I think even in the workshop, it's just a presentation and discussion, not for approval. I think that occurs in August, I want to say.
All right, so we have through August to kind of tweak this and look at it. So, well, I don't know if we need to have a workshop. If it rises to that level, I would be willing to sit down and go through it as a board, because I think it's really important for us to make sure that, this is just definitions and some cleanup work and not changing the relationship.
What did we do with the last agreement, the rebuild? We spent quite a bit of time with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, our initial, that rebuild thing.
I know it goes back
6 or 8 years ago, and we started out with them asking us for $8.5 million, and we drilled down on it, and we kept changing it, and we kept pushing back, and then we wound up spending $4.25 million. Because we took the time to really drill down and figure out what made sense. And staff at that time was excellent. They really did a great job of working that. So again, if this is just a matter of cleaning it up because there's verbiage in here that's already occurred, I get that because there's a lot of redlining. But there's other things that I just want to make sure that we're not changing, because this has to go to a vote. We've all got to agree to it. Every member county has to agree to it. It's got to be unanimous.
Right.
So we just got to make sure it makes sense for Charlotte County.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dave, thank you. While we're bringing Claire up for R4, let's go ahead and address R5. We have a letter before us, Ms. Knowlton.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay.
At the last meeting, there was consensus to send the Regional Planning Council a similar letter to Lee counties saying that we weren't interested in a presentation at this point in time. So you have before you a similar, shorter letter for your approval.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Move the response letter to the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, is there opposition to the motion? Hearing no opposition to the motion, it passes unanimously. With that, we are going to go to R4, and Commissioner Constance, I've got to turn it over to you for
Yes, sir.
a moment.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Claire Jubb, Assistant County Administrator. This is the second of 2 publicly noticed workshops dedicated to extraordinary circumstances. The majority of the information you hear today will be what I went through 2 weeks ago, but we have made a couple of changes in the slides and added a couple of slides in there based on the conversation a couple of weeks ago. So, like I said, the purpose of this is to present a demonstrated needs study to establish the existence of extraordinary circumstances necessitating the need to exceed the statutory impact fees phase-in limitations. This is based on legislative action. On June 4th of 2021, the Governor signed House Bill 337, which amended the Florida Impact Fee Act. It changed the definition of infrastructure. It placed limits on how and when impact fees can be increased by a jurisdiction, and there were some other minor language tweaks in there. Let's just go through the history of impact fees in Charlotte County. They were first enacted on 7/1 of 1986. There have been 10 increases, 6 decreases, 8 technical studies, and only 30 months of the 35 years of history had implementation rates been at 100% of the technical study. The range in impact fees for a single-family home has been from $946 in 1986 to a high of $7,780 in 2006, and the currently adopted rate is $5,660, and that's based on a 2,000 square foot home within the urban service zone, which goes back to the 2006-2007 impact fee schedule. On your recent action in October of 2021, you deemed the existence of extraordinary circumstances. In December, you adopted the ordinance setting impact fees at 90% of transportation and waiving all other impact fees. On March 8th, you directed staff to develop a new study on extraordinary circumstances. On March 17th, the new fee that you adopted back in December became effective. And then on May 10th, you held the first publicly noticed workshop dedicated to extraordinary circumstances. Just to look a little bit at the impact fee history, this shows the single-family fee and the maximum allowed under the technical study. So you can see, the lines are a little weird on there, but you can see that you have not been collecting 100% of impact fees allowed by the technical report for the majority of the time that you have had an impact fee in place. Although the lines for those early sections are together, you are actually collecting at 95% of the impact fees for a long time. Just looking at development history in Charlotte County, and I have updated this to include the April numbers in there, so you can see that steady climb in development. We anticipate that path to continue for the remainder of this year. And you'd also asked at the last meeting for us to do something around the location of single-family permits issued. It's not as illustrative as I would have hoped, but the red is Babcock and the blue is single-family infill. The green that you see on the FY 21-22 is Westport. So we tried to pull out those major areas for you. Population data, this just shows the population of Charlotte County is rising, and this is unincorporated Charlotte County. And then let's talk about the path forward. So there is a path to deviate from the phase-in requirements in the statute, and it has to be done in the following way. Demonstrated needs study justifying any increase in the excess of those authorized by legislation, which you have that. The demonstrated needs study must be completed within 12 months of the adoption of new fees. Demonstrated needs study you have is dated in May, so as long as you adopt within 12 months of that date, you comply with the law. The demonstrated needs study must expressly demonstrate the extraordinary circumstances necessitating the need to exceed the phased-in limitations, and that you must hold no less than 2 publicly noticed workshops dedicated to the extraordinary circumstances, and there must be a 4/5 vote, majority vote, to pass extraordinary circumstances. So let's just touch a little bit on what is an extraordinary circumstance. It's not defined by the statute. There's no guidance as to what constitutes an extraordinary circumstance. And in the absence of any additional direction, the definition seems to be to the purview of the board. I'd also add in there that there is no limitation in the language in the statute that limits the number of times that you can use this section of the statute. It just leaves it open to the board.
Mr. Chairman, since we just did the first part, I have just a couple quick questions. So in looking at your slide 7, which is the permits, so you said that's the data till the end of April?
Yes.
Which is the first 6 months of the fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
Right. So at 2,300, we're going to be over 4,000 permits pretty easily for the year.
That's what we're expecting, yes.
Okay, and then I think I'm hearing you already start to answer some of the interrogatories that Ms. Graham had at the podium. So if you could be addressing them as we go, that's perfect, because those are some of the things I was going to ask you. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, I'll do my best with
Thank you.
those. Okay, so just a reminder of the demonstrated needs study. It was completed by county staff. We have an incredible team at the direction of the board, dated May 2nd of 2022, and it considers extraordinary circumstances applicable to all impact fees. The prior extraordinary circumstances document was focused solely on transportation. There's a couple of things that I do think still apply that we talked about last time we did this. So first of all, preemption. This language is preemption. It limits the power of the local jurisdiction to appropriately fund needed infrastructure improvements within its jurisdictional boundaries. There are concerns that we have with the statute language that still exist, and some internal inconsistencies, one around the calculation of the impact fee being based on the most recent and localized data. If you have an impact fee study, a technical study that gives you that impact fee based on that data, but you're not allowed to implement it because of the statute, then that to me is an extraordinary circumstance and puts you at risk of a challenge. Again, there should be a rational nexus with the need for additional capital facilities and an increased impact generated by the new residential commercial construction. Again, if you're limited in how you can implement that technical study and those fees, then that creates an extraordinary circumstance, and it makes us pause a little bit when we talk about the dual rational nexus test. And lastly, although not an extraordinary circumstance, the Act requires the vote to be approved by at least a 2/3 vote of the governing body. This is a higher standard than anything you have for the passage of impact fees or taxes, assessments, or other fees imposed by the county. So let's move on to some things that are more specific to Charlotte County and talk about our growth patterns and challenges. So we do have a unique growth and development history. 90% of our population is in the unincorporated area, over 650 square miles to maintain. We have multiple suburban development centers, typically South County, Mid-County, and West County, which are spread over a large area, and where you often hear us say delivering city-level services at a county level, which is a struggle. And then we have pre-platted lands with minimal infrastructure that we're now seeing extensive infill. You saw that chart before that showed what that infill looked like. We are seeing that now, and we have to try and deal with the infrastructure challenges that is bringing to us. This is just an illustration of explosive growth. Everything in red is an improved lot, and everything in yellow is a vacant residential lot. And I think if we looked at this over time, you'd see how much infill we're getting. And this doesn't really look at those big development centers that we have. I wanted to include this because this is an example of where we are seeing some of that growth, although we do not have rooftops there. We have a lot of entitlements out there, and we're seeing things moving with the developers. So this is the burnt store growth that you've seen before. I wanted to include some home sales information. year to date, March of 2022 saw 564 closed sales. It was actually a little bit down on March 21, but I think that's a lot to do with the inventory that we have over here. I'd draw your attention to the median sales price, which is 34.4% higher than it was this time last year. I think I've seen articles that say it's up there around 390,000 in April, although I do not have the April numbers. Also draw attention to a study which showed that Punta Gorda metropolitan area, which includes Charlotte County, is the 4th fastest growing metro area in the country based on percentage increase, which kind of seems like we've been discovered. I wanted to give you a couple of slides around escalating costs that county staff are seeing. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Every department that has to do work around the county is seeing escalating costs in pretty much everything that we buy, just like everybody else is. But these are some indications of escalating costs for park amenities. If you look at the metal signage, for example, the prior cost was $192, it's now $285. That's a 48% increase. And I believe that's since 2019, that one. Escalating costs for apparatus for public safety. This came directly from the vendor, and you have that in your packet. You have the actual letter from the vendor. And, you know, the big one there is the paint, chemicals, and accessories. The HR steel going up 127% over last year. Again, looking at some escalating costs, looking at the producer price index and the engineer news record, you can see, 2020 for the producer price index at 1.49% and 2021 at 26.7%. So again, vastly increasing costs. And also, we're seeing that within permitting. This graph is showing the cost of construction that is given to us by the contractor and what we base our permit fees from, and you can see that's touching $300,000. It's never been that high.
Claire, is there still a statutory minimum that they can do? Because I don't remember if there used to be, for calculating costs for permitting purposes, you could use X dollars per square foot. It used to be an administrative part of the code. I don't know what it is now because we don't use that, but.
I don't know that that's still in there. What we do is either take the contractor's valuation or we use the ICC building valuation data.
Okay. I'm looking at this and I'm just not thinking it's right.
I think it's very underestimated.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to see if there's a reason, but yeah, thank you.
So let's talk about some other needs. We're seeing a lot of additional capital needs that may not have been as apparent.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question again about that average construction cost? That's such a broad.
Well, I mean,
a per square foot might make more,
well, it doesn't though, but what I'm going to say is that this is based on residential construction. So if you're looking at single family, most single-family homes are going to be in that 3.2, 2.2 type. Some will be 4s, some will be multi-stories, some will be, so some of those will skew. I just think overall, based upon a 3.2 with a swimming pool that I built 3 years ago that was about $432, not counting the lot that it sat on, I'm now like $650. So that's why I'm just trying to wrap my head around these numbers.
Gotcha.
And this doesn't really take into consideration, it certainly doesn't include the swimming pool or any accessory structures, but it also doesn't take into consideration high-end finishes, that type of thing that could be included. This is just a very basic, down and dirty cost of the construction. I think it's interesting that you can see that steady growth in there.
I guess it just bothers me that there's not more parameters with this. This is average construction of an average 1,400 square foot home, 1,800 square foot, there's got to be more to this than just that number, because it's, is it including maybe all tiny homes as well as bigger, So it's without knowing what constitutes the N, then it's very hard to look at data and go, it's helpful. Right now, this isn't really helpful other than there's a trend. Okay, I get that. But the number scale on the side is for me, not helpful.
And I'm gonna throw this into a tailspin in a minute anyway, but I think it'll help you understand. But I want her to get through her
All right, thank you, sir.
presentation.
So, like I said, we have additional capital needs that maybe we weren't as apparent when we did the last extraordinary circumstances memo back in October of last year. We're currently undergoing a fire master plan, which is looking at where we need additional public safety facilities, fire stations. We don't have that data out as yet, but we are indicating that we will need additional fire stations on top of what we already have planned in our sales tax. For 2020 sales tax. One of the areas that we're seeing facilities being accelerated is in Babcock. A lot of the Babcock projects are based on population within Babcock, whether it's in the development as a whole or individual increments. There are 3 increments there. Based on information we've been given by Babcock, and we do meet with them twice a year specifically to discuss this, their absorption rates are ahead of where they thought they were going to be. So those needs are becoming more urgent, and we have to start planning these things in, whereas we thought they were outside of the 6-year window. We've had to move some things into the 6-year window, which you will see when Gordon goes through his capital improvements for the upcoming budget, and we have included them in the slides that we have today. And then additional transportation needs, again, around the growth that we're seeing and the need to expand capacity for transportation. A good example of that is Burnstall Road. We're having conversations now about 6-laning of Burnstall and an east-west connector. Yes, a lot of that will be captured by prop share, but prop share and impact fees kind of work together. And you have one or the other. So if you have the impact fees are collecting where they need to be collecting, prop share really just accelerates when that payment comes in. One thing that I'm throwing out there, it doesn't have a direct relationship, but the urban county designation, we have a population that is very close to the 200,000 limit to transition to an urban county. It releases potential funding for additional block grants, not necessarily around infrastructure, but it does release that additional funding, and it could result in direct funding from federal government rather than going through the state, as we've seen with CARES. We functionally have a population that meets or exceeds or is very close to the urban county designation. We won't get that designation until the next census. So that's something to bear in mind as you're making your decision on this. I wanted to give you an illustration of the estimated annual fiscal impact. So this is what we would see in addition if we went to 100% of all fees, and that's looking at $11.4 million across all categories going to 100%. I also added in this table, which kind of shows it a little differently. It looks at each of the elements and where we are, so 90% of transportation, and then we're not collecting any of the others. So you see the third column there has the unfunded need based on the 6-year CIP. We've updated that unfunded need, and I'll go through these in detail as we go through each category. If we took the impact fees to 100%, there would be still deficits in each of the categories apart from parks. But there are certain things which are in the notes that have not been included. So in parks, we don't include any future land purchases. If you were to purchase, for example, other cedar parcels or something like that. In libraries, it's been updated to include the expenditure for the Babcock facility. And in fire, that number does not include any additional needs identified in the fire master plan. So there are some caveats around those numbers. So let's go on category by category and the impact of transportation. So you're currently at 90% collection on transportation. It's impacted by explosive population growth, particularly in those infill lots. The escalating cost of construction and infrastructure. There are items that Public Works use regularly that are seeing a 26%, 27% increase in costs. We also have flat gas tax funds. So we're not seeing a corresponding rise in gas tax, which Gordon has been through many times with you. What we've done is taken the projects, the CIP, and we've added in, assumed you go to 100% impact fees on each of those, and those are the 2 items that are highlighted in the bottom. So you'll see if we went to 100% impact fees, you'd be still looking at a $29.5 million shortfall, but that's a lot better than the shortfall that we had on the prior few slides. So going then to regional community parks, again, explosive population growth requires escalation of new amenities and possibly new parks. The escalating cost of parks amenities and associated construction costs, and the cost of land for new parks and the flexibility to purchase desirable land as it becomes available. You will notice here that there's no mention of Babcock under parks. That is because they are responsible for their parks. We don't have any matching component with their parks until we get down to libraries.
Okay, can you hold right there?
Yep.
Mr. Deutsch.
Thanks. I wasn't sure my button was working.
No, it's pushed. I was reading something, trying
Okay.
to...
That's all.
So you got to give me a minute to... I'm working here, too.
You did an extraordinary job, and it was a great task, so I compliment you for your efforts on it. I think we have a dilemma, and I pushed my button way back on the population thing. We're over 200,000 now.
I have read a study, it's 204 plus. Just so.
Yeah, I said 203. I think I said 203 at a meeting the other day. So and we're in a little bit of a quandary there because we're on a cusp, which is going to be affecting us because the feds use, when they determine whether or not we're over or under 200,000, they go by the census. Now, assuming, boy, I hate to use that word, assuming, if the census is valid, and that's a question because now they're saying the whole state was undercounted, but if we go ahead with what we know is reality, that we've got 203 or 4,000 people in Charlotte County, which I easily would agree to, where our status would not be subject to change, according to the feds, for another 7 or 8 years till after we get through the next census. And there's a good side to that coin, and there's a bad side to that coin. And that's something that we're going to have to look at because our eligibility, population-wise, is going to change. Now, the feds do their thing, and they have their validation and justification for it, et cetera, et cetera. I would just wonder if all of a sudden it turns around and, and I started, I guess, almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, talking about APE, and Gordon loves it, the accelerated population explosion. That in itself is an extraordinary circumstance, and we're sort of blessed because certainly since Chris and I have been on the board, we've been looking way down the road to the future. We went through what we were doing with water, and arguably we're told that we have the best roads in the state of Florida, and we're looking ahead at, doing Bayshore, and we're looking ahead at doing, Flamingo to some, and you're doing everything we can on our end. What we can't do is we can't control the prices and the cost. And I'm in a quandary because I hadn't been excited or hadn't been very strongly in favor of accepting the need to raise the impact fees. The industry was hurting a number of years ago. We also thought we would stimulate that, and maybe we did a little bit, maybe we didn't. I think we have to seriously look at this. And it's a pass-through, and the builders are sort of kind of caught in the middle. And I'm empathetic and I sympathize with that. They're caught between increasing prices, the difficulty with the supply chain. They've got, they've got additional transportation costs. And I can remember it was almost a year ago when things were starting, just about a year ago. So when things were starting to go up, and I was talking to the chairman about the construction industry, having been involved in it a little bit a number of years ago. And I forget how many $1,000s he told me difference there was in the cost of the roof shingles from the time he ordered it. What was that, Bill? $3,000 or $4,000 difference from the time you ordered them till they arrived.
Yeah, trusses were $5,000 a week before they're delivered. They went up without notice. Yeah.
I have my oldest son's rehabbing a house, and he knows that I used to be a general contractor. And a little while back, he was asking me to help him price the stuff, and I'd say, I'm so far out of the loop. I can remember getting a 2x4 by 8 for $1.09 on sale. They went $4.55 now. So I said, don't ask me to help you price that job. And of course, every time we talk about it, I can't understand why it's cost them so much to get everything done. So I think it's the reality of where we're at. And I think that's a problem. But I think the population issue we're going to have to look at. And I think we're going to need some input on interpreting how the feds are going to be interpreting us and where we're at, and how we're going to stay on top of our game in trying to get as much federal assistance as we can. And we've been pretty good, and state, you know, as it trickles through, particularly with FDOT and stuff, you know, that we want to keep doing that. And we're going to be caught in a real challenge here, population-wise. So I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that. But I think we've got to realistically look at the numbers. And you're talking about permits, and we look at Burnstall Road, and there's an awful lot of permits, and you know, people react to that. They're not going to get built right away. It's impossible that they'll be built right away. And the thing that we can pat ourselves on the back or the butt or wherever we want for is that we've planned ahead with the roads, because we're still staying way ahead of the game. And we're unique there, but we managed to do that. But if you want to see those rooftops blowing up and happening, look at Rotunda, look at South Gulf Cove. Those, you cannot drive a couple blocks that you don't see the rooftops going up. And the houses are still selling. I think we're caught sort of in a time warp. But I wanted to get out there among talking about this and what you did, and the population being higher than we acknowledge there, that we're going to have to address that, and I think we've all got to be aware of that. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so just moving through regional and community parks, again, we've done the same thing. We've added in impact fees at 100%, and you can see that in parks, there's actually a surplus of $2.8 million based on those additional impact fees coming in. And I know Gordon's back there if you have questions about these, because these are his slides. So moving on to libraries, I am pulling in Babcock Ranch here because there is a need for a library in Babcock Ranch. It's in the Schedule D development order, because of their growth, it looks like we're having to move that into the 6-year window, as you'll see as I go down. So here we've added in that Babcock Ranch Library. And bearing in mind, they do the shell, we do the build out, and then we have to stock it. But even with impact fees at 100%, and seeing that Babcock Ranch Library added in 26, we're still looking at a deficit there, a shortfall of $9.5 million on libraries.
Claire, you're indicating that the Babcock Ranch Library build out is $10 million?
We're still working through that number. That's the number we've got in the CIP at the moment, but we're still working through that number. It will come down. It's not going to be that high. Yes, it will come down, but we just went with the numbers that we had at the time. So you may see, you know, that shortfall fall to around $5 million, something like that. Under Fire EMS, additional needs as a result of explosive population growth, which is being looked at through the Fire Master Plan. The accelerated growth in Babcock Ranch, we are required to have a fire station up and running in Babcock by the 1st of October of 2024, so we're already going through design. The next two, because there are 3 in Babcock Ranch, based on the population in the other increments, so we'd be looking at population of 12,500, I believe, in increment 2 and increment 3. Increment 2 has been opened, and from what I understand, has been pretty much mostly taken down by developers, so the land has been sold, although we're not seeing any entitlements other than spine roads come through at the moment. Increment 3 is not open yet, but you will be seeing it later on this year, so that will be open. So that could accelerate those areas as well. And then, as I've demonstrated, the increased cost of apparatus, which impacts capital expenditure. And again, we've done the same thing with public safety, but this does not include any additional stations that have not been identified yet, but we do anticipate those to be in the Fire Master Plan. You're still looking at a shortfall of $2.1 million there. Moving on to the Sheriff's Operations Law Jail. Again, we're looking at increased cost of construction, we're looking at increased cost of capital equipment, and the accelerated growth of Babcock Ranch. We have the requirement to build out their sheriff's building, again by 1st of October of 2024. And if we add 100% impact fees into those areas, we're still looking at a shortfall of $10.4 million. Going on to public buildings, accelerated growth in Babcock, there is a requirement at 17,500 population in Babcock to have an annex out there. We're still working through what that looks like. It may be that that's a combined building with a library or something like that. We're still working through the details of that. And we're also seeing increased cost of construction for existing projects. And again, adding in the annex, adding in the mosquito control building at Babcock, and other items that we have, we'd be looking at 100% impact fees. You'd still be looking at a shortfall of $2.5 million there. So as a conclusion, staff believes that specific extraordinary circumstances have been demonstrated in addition to the ones that were demonstrated in the prior study, which would allow the board to increase the impact fees outside the phase-in limitations set forth in the Florida Impact Fee Act. Next steps, this is the second of the 2 required publicly noticed workshops. We need a 2/3 majority vote to deem the existence of extraordinary circumstances. And if you do deem that extraordinary circumstances exist, we bring back a revised impact fee schedule, which we could come back with as soon as June 14th. And then any implementation of an increased impact fee will be 90 days after the public hearing. So a couple of action items today. First would be if you choose to approve a resolution accepting the demonstrated needs study and finding that extraordinary circumstances exist. Then to set a public hearing for 10 a.m. or as soon thereafter on June 14th to hear amendments to the county's impact fee ordinance, which will be where we would set the fees. And then we'd be looking for some direction today on where you want those fees to be, if that's what you choose to do. I wanted to bring you back to this unfunded needs summary, if impact fees are raised to 100%. And then just give you a slide here, a couple of slides, which is the current fee schedule. So you have that information as you're talking through this. And then here's a comparison of the impact fees if we went in at what they are today, and at 100% of all categories. So you can see there a single-family home is currently $56.60, will go to $9,789. I think that's all I have for you.
Claire, so I appreciate the summary sheet, but I have some issues with some of the items that are showing that we indicate that would be available for impact fees, and that is a replacement of 2 firehouses. How do those qualify under the statute, unless we're expanding? The expanded aspect of it would fall under the impact fee statute, as I understand it, but I don't think, in general, the replacement would be.
I believe it allows us to do all capital infrastructure because the need for a new fire station or replacement of fire station is to basically bring that up to date and make it operate more efficiently. But
well, you're taking a metal building that's a piece of junk and you're making it a concrete building. So yeah. I get that, but it's not because of population growth, because we're going to add stations for population growth. So I just want to make sure that that falls really under the statute, that's right, because to me, that would fall under general ad valorem or MSBU or however it falls, in the budgeting process. At least a portion of it would. Any expansion of bays or new equipment in addition to what's there would all fall under impact fees.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner, as we look at these fire stations, again, we're looking for the study to come back and tell us what our operational, sorry, for the record, Emily Lewis, Deputy County Administrator. As we're looking at the fire study to come back, it will tell us operationally what we're going to be needed at any new and the existing stations. I'm going to use Station 2 as an example. Station 2 is a station replacement. However, it was an expansion of bays. As you get to the expansion of bays, you're looking at adding apparatus, which also would be eligible for impact fees. So just
I agree with all that. It's just the base portion of it would not fall under impact fees as I understood it, so I just wanted to clarify. So those numbers could come down. We might not have a shortfall. In other words, we might be able to cover everything based upon the fact that the full amount of those buildings doesn't fall under impact fees.
Yeah, I would also say that funding for all of the capital is a combination of different funding sources.
Right. So I just think that the snapshot of a picture, because I look at this and I say, this is where all the impact fees need to go, but that's not 100% accurate. Mm-hmm. And so I would need more information to help clarify where these dollars actually fall. Okay. Commissioner Constance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Claire, can you go back to the unfunded needs summary? It's like the fourth to last slide. If impact fees raised to 100%. So, first line, transportation, you're saying by raising it from 90% to 100%, we're going to bring in $40 million?
There was also a change in there around some of the items included in the CIP. So we can show you all the calculations, but that would be the number that we have now.
Okay. So in the notes there, you probably needed to put something more to explain that, because that's not just, applying additional dollars.
No.
There's other things occurring. So I think this slide needs to be expanded a little bit to show what the unfunded need is for the 6-year CIP. And I would say, again, like libraries, so that would include the additional money for the Babcock Library in that first column, and then the updated amount would be less, because this is skewed, and it's apples and oranges. It's not. I need to know what is the defined need, period, and what we would cover with that defined need with the current structure. And then if we went to 100%, now what those numbers look like. This slide does not represent that, and it's confusing to me.
Okay, we can make that change.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I agree. Commissioner Doherty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took the last 2 weeks, spent a lot of time, went back and reread the Duncan and Associates study, believe it or not. Tried to refresh my memory on a lot of the methodology and things that went in it. I hope this is it, guys. I hope this is our last go-around with this topic for a while, And so I'd like to take this. I've broken down my comments into the 3 categories. First, I want to talk about extraordinary circumstances. Some comments came up from Ms. Graham this morning. I think you were starting to go there, too. I just want to make sure, that's really my intent of my comments today, to make sure that we move ahead properly. That's all. And first of all, you correct, your September 2021 needs study focused on transportation. And there has been some concern, I've heard some concern as to how quickly we're going now into looking at the other categories. I've defended it from the standpoint that things have come up in essentially the last year, 6 months to a year, that have us now looking at it again. Now, I understand what you said earlier, and I need Ms. Knowlton to confirm it again. There's nothing in the new law that defines the frequency or limits the frequency that we can define extraordinary circumstances.
There isn't.
So it is our call.
It is your call.
I just wanted to, because it's important. It just, the statute, as we all know, the reason we're doing this, the statute says we're not supposed to touch this for once every 4 years. So we're obviously doing it much quicker.
You are. If I can just answer that a little bit, I have the statute in front of me. Section 6E of the statute says an impact fee may not be increased more than once every 4 years. However, Section 6G, which gives you the ability to change using extraordinary circumstances, specifically cites that you can change paragraph E, which is the every 4 year paragraph. So it. Yeah.
And we know that. I'm just, for the benefit of the public, just trying to explain why we're doing what we're doing today. So basically, the reason your study right now, we can come to the conclusion that extraordinary circumstances take place, primarily kind of boils down to 3 things: the explosive growth, the rapid escalation of costs, the inflation that we're all seeing right now, and Babcock. The Babcock facilities need to be accelerated so that we can meet our commitments out there. So that's the basis for extraordinary circumstances. I think all 5 of us have acknowledged that previously. So I think from that standpoint, that first facet, that first bullet on our action item gets taken care of today, no matter what. Now it transitions into my homework that I did for the last 2 weeks, looking at Duncan and Associates study. And I just think it's important, if you can go to the slide on everything's at 100%. Mr. Chairman, I don't intend to get down to the nitty-gritty on this thing. Just a basic for the public's. When you look at all the categories, you've got a number there, Claire, for each transportation, fire and EMS, and so forth. That number is, in fact, I believe, a net impact number for each land use. In other words, I believe that the original total number is calculated, And then there are credits given from that total number, one credit being the sales tax amount, and then non-sales tax. Now, I'm just curious, is there anybody in our group, Mr. Flores, that can recall what Duncan used relative to the non-sales tax credit? Because it talks about it in general being ad valorem taxes, grants, but historically. I think he went back 11 years. Does anybody?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And
You don't have to answer, but that's something I'm trying to understand right now. It doesn't appear that in the January 2021 study that he did, he was using up-to-date data that we were seeing the trends in our capital projects fund. We were seeing excesses in our capital projects fund, which should have been, in my opinion, hindsight now, looked at, and maybe he was. I just don't know. I need that answer, though. I need somebody to eventually drill down to see, because what that would do, that would change those numbers, that net number, if in fact there was additional non-sales tax dollars that should have been credited, right?
Each category has a non-sales tax credit per service unit, but I don't understand it.
Yeah. So
I mean, there's a number there, but I don't know the calculation for it.
We're going to look at this number, all these other categories. Transportation, by the way, I'm ready to go. I said that last meeting. I'm ready to go to 100%. That's a different animal, and we have a different situation, different aspects of it. It's these other categories that are not as clear to me as to how we applied some of those other revenue sources that come in for capital projects and how they were credited, Claire. Okay? That's all. And it could have done perfect. Today, we know where we are with the capital projects fund. It's considerably different. So the numbers would be different today, but that's not relevant yet. That's part of the reason the conversation has taken place, I think, Commissioners, as to whether or not we need a new study, too. You know, I mean, really, some of this information is getting a little stale. Okay, now we get into, we can take public safety as a spreadsheet. One of those is fine. They're all about the same. And I agree, Mr. Chairman, I need also verification that all of the expenditures that we're going to place under the category of being paid for by impact fees meet the test, the legal test, that we're increasing capacity or whatever that may be, okay? Just need to clarify that. That can be on a one-on-one for me over the next couple of weeks, just so I understand that we are.
If I can, I think it should come back to the board so everybody gets to see it. And I mean, even, I'm sorry, Commissioner, if you don't mind, even on the transportation, I mean, the Edgewater projects, five of us have said we need to move it forward. But what portion of that project qualifies for the impact fees? It's still widening, the expansion part, all that. I think we have total numbers in here. And so those are the things that I would like to see us boil down to. And I apologize, but I'll go back to you.
That's kind of where I am. I mean, it's just making sure, validating at this place in time that we understand again. I know it's going back through a little bit, but just want to make sure we're okay. Now, what I'm concerned about, not on the expenditure side on that chart up there, but on the funding sources. And we had a workshop on capital projects back on May 18th, 2021. And there was quite a discussion. Commissioner DeSaio, you had a good conversation with Gordon, was at the podium, and it was very clear that we had a need for transportation. And that's why I think the first needs assessment, the needs study, focused on transportation. But there was a lot of discussion as to where were we with the other categories. And we kind of got the message as a board that we were okay. And I was trying to retrace that, trying to figure out, because you even made the comment, like, we don't need to raise impact fees if we don't need to raise them. If we need to raise them, we need to raise them. So I went back through and I looked at the spreadsheet that we had back then, and we had over for excess, let's call it excess ad valorem dollars available, probably as a result of the explosive growth, in the vicinity of over $60 million. Where does that show up? Because it is a legitimate funding source for all of these categories. Why aren't we showing capital project fund dollars?
Let me hand over to
the board. Hasn't set any policy on these, and that's maybe the problem. We haven't given staff any direction as to how to divvy those dollars up.
Exactly, and the preface behind these slides was, if you remember, was a bring, and Commissioner, you'll have to point me to what you're looking at because I don't remember that type of excess. Because what has happened with capital projects is we have essentially designated them for taking care of what we already have. So by the time you pay the debt service on Murdoch Village, the capital maintenance plan for parks, yes.
Just to help you. It just says, as recently as our workshop on April the 19th, you show all these nice little white areas.
Oh, you're going out to 2032.
Well, no, I'm only going you go first 7, it's probably $50 million, okay? If you look at this chart and do the arithmetic, so what I'm trying to get to is that back on the 18th of May, it was $63 million of 2021. Now it's about $50 million over this next 6 years. I'm saying, why can't we take, because most of those dollars, you said and testified that most of those dollars are a result of the growth, the construction that we've got going on. I'm asking, why can't we consider using some of those dollars?
That's absolutely the board's prerogative. Right. Yeah, what we've essentially laid out is said, look, we're going to take the maintenance first and foremost out of those dollars, and you can see as that's dwindled over time. If we continue this population growth, absolutely, those dollars could be there if we continue.
Just if I can continue, it's in everything we're doing right now, impact fees, projections, and everything based on this growth continuing, explosive growth, the 4,000 houses a year. So if that doesn't happen, all of the revenue assumptions go south. So all I'm trying to get to is that it doesn't show up, none of the capital projects fund is showing up here. And I think that's because we haven't set policy, gentlemen. We haven't given him direction as to how to possibly use that. And if the dollars that we're seeing, that growth in that fund, ad valorem dollars, has grown because of the new construction. A lot of that is from, I think that's what you said last meeting. It's growth helping pay for itself. So that's part of what I want to see happen here over the next couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever we're going to do before we go to hearing, is understand if, or maybe, Mr. Flores, some recommendations from administration as to how we could use those growth dollars, in ad valorem growth dollars, to help this situation. That's all. That's about it, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner DeSalle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, a lot's changed in a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So
6 months.
we have a technical report that we commissioned that looked at our capital needs, worked with staff for a very long period of time. The technical report meets the rational nexus test. It's legally defensible, and it says this is what our impacts are supposed to be. So, I mean, I guess we can sit here and, you know, it's great to, you know, flesh this out, and I'm all for it. But any excess funds that may come in due to the ad valorem coming in, we can apply to the deficit on roads. It gives us discretion to use that. It doesn't mean you use it to discount impact fees, right? Because the report says that's what the impact fees are for. So now if we're going to start trying to earmark funding coming in from ad valorem to offset impact fees, well, I guess you can do that. That's one strategy with board direction. However, I'd like to have that, if there is any excess, to the extent we get that, to come in, and at our discretion, we could apply it to priorities of the board for some of the roads, because we're short so much. And there are so many other things that are unknown to this board right now that I can guarantee you we're going to need funding for. We just don't know it yet, right? So I would hate to, I guess, allocate future ad valorem to offset the technical report, because the technical report also took into consideration the 1% sales tax. So the rates were already discounted based on the 1% sales tax passing. Not to mention our impact fees and some interesting slides in here. So we're 3 or 4 times less than Lee County, yet they're one of the top 10 growth counties in the nation, based on one of the slides in there. Cape Coral's right up there, and their fees are higher than ours. So everybody with higher fees than ours, even if we're at 100%, we're still the best value in impact fees when you compare us to Sarasota, City of Northport, and Lee County. You know, on social media, there's a lot of commentary on there, and there was a commentary about some of the previous debates this board had, and it was brought up again today in the chamber about a bargain basement community. And I don't engage in social media. You know, whatever I have to say, I say it with the mics on and the cameras rolling. But since it was brought to the chamber, I'm going to address it now. So a citizen came up and spoke, Mrs. Graham. She represents the local building association. She's a member of that, and I appreciate what they do. I really do, because this board, we have lobbyists. You know, we have special interests. Our special interests are the taxpayers of Charlotte County, right? So the Building Industry Association, their special interest is their membership. And I get that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We go up to Tallahassee and fight for what we want here in Charlotte County all the time, just like any special interest does for their membership. But she made the comment that a statement was made, and it was really to me, that a member of this board said this is a bargain basement community. One only needs to go back to the video, and I clearly said, quote, "Our impact fees are a bargain basement when you compare it to other communities." I did not say Charlotte County is a bargain basement community. And that's been out there on social media, but like I said, I don't engage. But since she brought it to the chamber, it's that kind of misinformation that doesn't help, right? And it shows you're losing the argument. So, you know, if you're going to make a statement, just look at the video. You know, if I make a statement that's inappropriate, I'll take my lumps. But don't say I said something that I didn't. That's all. I just wanted to make that point. I guess I would say this also. It sounds like there's consensus on passing the resolution for extraordinary circumstances. We have to set a public hearing for how we raise impact fees or lower, whatever this board ends up doing. That would be for June 14th. But you need a motion for the resolution first and then progression. So I'm going to move a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Charlotte County, Florida, accepting a demonstrated need study and finding that extraordinary circumstances exist to justify setting impact fee rates to an amount other than the phase-in limitation set forth in Section 163.31801 Florida statutes, providing an effective date.
Now I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Got a second. I have a comment, if you don't mind. I support the motion, and until I get more information, I can't support the result of the motion. So I think that it's really important that we have the information more clarified. And I'm not asking for putting ad valorem dollars out in front of this. I'm asking for, let's identify what we think as best we can, the most accurate dollar amounts that can be funded by impact fees, so it's reflective of our decision. That's really how we've got to make the right decision, in my opinion, to justify where we go. And that means that, you know, if Station 3 is going to cost us $5 million and $1 million of it is expansion or whatever, let's identify that, or if it's more than that. But I just want to make sure that we're accurate and it is a good information that we're making decisions on, which also makes it defensible. I think it's all that's pretty important. Commissioner Doherty.
Yes, sir. And I that's kind of why I brought up that funding source. You can see that both the impact fees and the sales tax are kind of put in the lump together as legitimate to be used for any expenditure. And that's what I've got a little concern over is the impact fees, as we all know. Capital Projects Fund has the most flexibility. Sales tax, we really do, I think, Ms. Knowlton, have a lot of flexibility. However, we have at least a moral and ethical responsibility relative to the Tier 1, Tier 2 projects. But actually, we have probably pretty good flexibility relative to the utilization of those dollars. The least is the impact fees. The impact fees, I've always understood, have to be related to capacity increases and not just for any capital projects. So that's why I'm supporting what the chairman brought up, is that I really, and that's really what, bless you again, it's making sure that we understand what the true, in the whole scheme of things, how many of those dollars really are impact fee dollars that we need. I think that's what you're saying.
And I think it's reflective, and I'll get right to you, sir. I think it's reflective of how else we have to plan for the future. So what do I mean by that? We have over $3 billion of new revenue, or not new revenues, excuse me, new assets, if you will, in housing in the community, right, over the last 4.5 years. Okay, so it's like $3,051,400,000. And that's generating additional revenues, right? And it's generating additional revenues at a much higher percentage than folks like me who've been here for 31 years and have Save Our Homes in place, and we only advance a little bit at a time. So a lot of these resets are taking place, and a lot of these new projects are coming in. Some of them, probably more of them than not, are going to be homesteaded, and I get that. But I really want to see, because when we have some of these things that don't qualify for impact fees, we have additional revenues now that will help, support some of this other stuff that's not going to be paid for by impact fees. I think it helps us see the whole picture in the light that it really needs to be seen in. And I know we'd all like to have potentially a new technical report, but I don't want to waste time and money on another one until we have our next sales tax. I like the way we set it up. I think it makes sense. I don't think but by the way, we did have it updated to some extent. So I don't know how we put all that together exactly, but it's a lot of information that really helps to clarify and shine a light on that picture. It makes it the most transparent decision-making process that we can possibly make it.
So we can absolutely pull all that information together for you. My suggestion of the June 14th meeting, you can go with a public hearing then if you wanted, or you could go to the next meeting in June. It's really up to you. It's going to take us a little bit of time, but just chatting with Gordon, it's not going to take us a huge amount of time to pull that information together for you.
I would just say we base it upon getting all that information back and being able to review it. So I'll let the board direct me on that one. I do have Commissioner Teseo in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when the technical report was crafted, they know the statute. They know what qualifies for impact fees. So a lot of this discussion we're having should have been addressed in the technical report. In other words, the rate that he proposed or was a result of the technical report took into consideration our needs and what's statutorily allowed.
Except one of the things that they changed when they changed the Impact Fee Act was the definition of infrastructure. So we have to just make sure that that's still in the same premises as to what Duncan Associates did.
Okay, and he didn't take that into consideration?
That was after. It was done after he'd written the technical report. There are not major changes. In fact, I think it's a bit more expansionary.
Yeah, because I thought it included equipment and other things.
It does.
So I actually thought it actually, enlarged what could get covered.
I think it does, but I'd want to get that information clarified and back to you.
Right, okay. So, well, there's a motion right now for extraordinary circumstances, but you're saying since a lot of this data is readily available that the board's asking for, you can have it ready for the June 14th if we set a public hearing?
It would be tight, but we could do it.
Okay.
If not, go
You'd let us know?
Yes.
And it could be moved to the next one if we can't get it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Constance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in listening to my fellow commissioners and giving staff the time they need, I think June 14th is probably too tight. I just think, everybody's going to need to be comfortable. You're going to need 4 commissioners if we're going to make any kind of movement here. And so I just think if we have more time for them to drill down and give us those numbers, again, I'm kind of agreeing with what Commissioner Teseo has said all along, because that's kind of where I've been, but I'm understanding that I have at least 2 other commissioners that really need to see the specific expansion part of categories expanded so that they can fully understand what makes sense for funding with impact fees versus not. And I don't think we've ever gone down this road in this way before. So I don't know. Just for me, I understand, we're rolling, but I think it gives us an opportunity. And I guess what I would even say is there a possibility of doing another just workshop item, not a public hearing, in 2 weeks if you have more information? So we're not going to make a decision, but we're going to have more information on the 14th. item and then go, okay, now what do you guys want to do? We still have enough time to set a public hearing for the 28th or whatever it is.
I was going to bring that
'Cause
up.
I think again, there's a bunch of things we've been discussing, other topics where it's going to kind of be a series of discussions to get us to a clear understanding of what the truth is.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Deutsch.
We're pretty darn close here. I got in the queue. I was going to make a motion. I think we agree on the extraordinary circumstance. I was going to make a motion that we put it off. I think we all appreciate the effort that went into this, and I appreciate what it's going to take to get us that information that we all want. I was going to suggest that we just put it off till the 28th, and that way we'd have the information, that the motion could say that we do it on the 28th, have the hearing on the 28th, and we'd have the information, and as soon as she could get it, review it, and move ahead. But I think we could do it either way at that point.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Is there any further discussion? Is there opposition to the resolution? Hearing no opposition, it passes unanimously. And I think bringing it back as a regular item for next meeting, just to see where we are and all that, would be a good idea. I think that's a very transparent way. It shows we're putting in the work, guys. I mean, I think it's important.
So we'll give direction to bring it back in a similar piece like this, but then as a part of it, Part A is discussion and Part B is set a public hearing for the 28th. That would be the...
Exactly.
And then go from there.
Exactly. All right. Do you want to do comments or do them at 1 o'clock after?
After.
That's what I would do.
Wait, I think the attorney wants to...
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm not closing out.
We're not setting a public... Do you want a motion now?
I just wanted to clarify. So you approve the resolution.
Right.
Yes.
And then another motion. Oh, are you getting ready to make the second motion?
I mean, does it require a motion, or is it just a direction of staff to set another item in 2 weeks for discussion, and then part of that item would be at that time to set the public hearing for the 28th? So we're not really taking action now, we're just...
As long as we have consensus to
yes.
that.
Is everybody good with that?
Everybody was good with that.
Yeah, I think it doesn't require a motion. We're all in the same space, and then... Yeah. And, Mr. Chairman, I would say discussion after public comments, because we usually...
I just like to offer it just in case. But yeah, I think that's good. So with that, we'll go into recess, and we'll see everybody back here at 1 o'clock. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Board of County Commissioners land use portion of the meeting. We're going to go into public input on any county-related subject, and anyone wishing to address the board during this portion of the meeting must state their name for the record. Remarks on county-related subjects are limited to 3 minutes and shall be addressed to the commission as a body, and there is no discussion at this time. And Mr. Russell, I'm going to invite you to come up first, sir.
Well, thank you. I got a couple of things for handouts, if you don't mind here. This will go to all 7 folks there.
Thank you, sir.
And this goes out to the 5 commissioners.
Yep.
The 5 commissioners.
Have to give one to the clerk.
We start? We started.
Yes.
Get me for delay a game.
But we're passing out stuff, so we're...
Oh,
he's well, we're getting... I know there's a mad rush to the podium right now, but that's fine. That's fine. I've already seen that multiple times. Okay, Mr. Russell, go ahead, sir.
Commissioners, Richard Russell, Port Charlotte, Florida. I do want to remind everybody to please put it out there. Mosaics Workshop in DeSoto County is Tuesday the 31st, conveniently after the day after Memorial Day. I don't know why they did that, but I can guess. And it's important that we get people from Charlotte County to attend and pay attention and ask questions and challenge them on their statements. The one thing I say, and is factual, they're not saying things under oath. They're up there pontificating, so we don't know how truthful they are. Number two, I passed out something regarding a blockage on a sidewalk in our neighborhood that's been going on for almost a year. And the rate they are going with that house, I would say it'll be 6 more months. It'll still be blocked. Something's got to be done. Probably won't be done in time for us in Buena Vista neighborhood to be able to walk down to the park on the one sidewalk that we have to get there, and it puts people at risk. My next topic is the building association. I know they want to limit impact fee raises. They'd like to get rid of impact fees. And let's face it, they got more money than we citizens do to throw at this issue. And consequently, we have to plead with you all to hold the line and make sure that the monies that come in go to where they should go. And they shouldn't be coming out of our ad valorem taxes, because that's for ongoing things. And if anything, if we got so much money left over on ad valorem, how about reducing the taxes on the citizens? You know, cut us a break. I mean, we also are having to go through the inflationary situation. So take that money and give us a break. But impact fees, the word impact, what does that mean? Impact. So you got something new coming along, they create an impact. They're going to need more services, more water, sewer, you name it. They're going to need it. So the impact fee is to cover that. And for us to be currently operating at 50% of what our neighbor to the north is getting is off the record, out of sight. I mean, I can't believe it. You got to have water, you got to have air to live, and that's what we need. We need the money to make sure we have that. And I see I'm running low on time just about. So again, Mosaic, they stand in our way for a healthy, prosperous community. They've already destroyed some places up north, and in the years past, they've done some damage to our own Charlotte Harbor. So we need to make sure we get people out for May 31st, and again in July and in October at their, if they have them, workshops. And I appreciate your all's time, I appreciate your efforts, and I appreciate your attention to the concerns that I and others have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. We don't have anybody else coming forward, so we will go into, please come forward.
And I too have handouts. Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Susan Gervais, Finance Director for Charlotte County Clerk of the Circuit Court, and County Comptroller Roger D. Eaton. Clerk Eaton and the Comptroller Division are actually pleased to be here to share with you our first published version of a popular financial report for the county. Most of the information derived from that report, or in that report, comes from our annual comprehensive financial report, which is a 255 financial page document. That is brief summary of actions in the county. So because it's summaries, it does not comply with generally accepted accounting principles for government entities, nor is it audited. Rather, it's a brief analysis for citizens so they can see generally where revenues come from, where the money is spent during a fiscal year. You can consider it maybe an easy to read financial report. And that, as well as the ACFR, are available on the clerk's website at charlotteclerk.com under departments, transparencies, and then all the financial reports are there. So we are hoping that you and the citizens of Charlotte County consider this an informative guide that a general citizen can understand what's happening with the finances. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Did you have some citizens' input you wanted to bring forward at this time?
I'm waiting for a gentleman that's going to be speaking. He's parking the car.
Is that in reference to any county-related subject, or is that in reference to a land use item? Okay. We might be a little busy out there today. So without board objection, since we're waiting on him, can we come back to citizens' input and go ahead and thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Flores, we're going to go ahead and go to you, sir.
Sure thing. 2 items. Wanted to give the board an update. I know we've talked individually on just the status of the cultural center. We as the county, it's our building, so we're keeping it maintained. You know, we've got one tenant utilizing the space. Reached out to Charlotte Community Foundation, that's our partner that's funding the community needs assessment study. They're conducting the consultant search, narrowing down the list, and they plan to provide the board an update next month. I believe probably the June 28th, our second meeting in June is what we're shooting for. So just want to give you an update on the Cultural Center. And then I was going to have Cam Pennant give us an update on the special session and things in the legislative world, if you want to have him get started on that and how we time in the citizen coming in for input.
Thank you.
Okay, and there he is. Hi, Cam.
Mr. Bennett, welcome. Afternoon.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, County Commissioners, County staff, members of the public. For the record, this is Cameron Pennant, Legislative Manager for Charlotte County, Florida.
Time's up, I'm sorry.
Nice
job.
Got a lot of updates.
Back to you, sir. I can't help it.
So I'll start on the state level for these updates, given the special session that's been convened yesterday. This special session is on property insurance, but largely it's about housing. We just got notified today, actually just a minute ago, that they reached a deal on condo regulations after the Surfside collapse. There's an issue that they were trying to get a deal on this week. They have to get the governor's approval since the governor convened the special session. However, 2/3 of the legislature can vote to extend and expand the special session itself. But on the special session, in its original form, was on property insurance. The property insurance situation that we were seeing at this point is a catastrophe, to say the least. 20 years ago was an issue, 10 years ago was a problem, 5 years ago was a crisis. Today, it's absolutely a catastrophe. We've been losing property insurance companies in the state of Florida for the last several years. They're just falling off by the wayside. Now, there is a backstop, of course, as some of you may know, the Citizen Property Insurance Program that the state has. This is the taxpayers that fill the gap if people are falling off the rolls of certain property insurers. However, that has ballooned over the last couple of years from about 400,000 to 800,000. It's expected to reach 1 million at least, depending on hurricane season, which starts next week, Wednesday. So it's a serious issue that we're dealing with. So one of the proposals, several of the proposals that are being discussed now, to be clear, we have Representative Trumbull in the House and Senator Boyd in the Senate that are both leading the primary two bills. They're identical bills in both the House and Senate. They're leading and championing the two bills. Before I get into that, I will note that there are other bills by Democrat and other members as well. In the Senate, those were not heard yesterday. In the House, actually right now at 1:30, they're expected to be heard in the House committee. So I'll have to wait and see what exactly is discussed on some of those other bills, because there may be more that comes up. But in terms of the two main bills that leadership is talking about, the first one is mainly trying to deal with the property insurance issues. So this main issue is trying to basically solve for the fact that essentially premiums have skyrocketed dramatically. Essentially what they're trying to do now is reduce the premium, reduce the front load cost for Florida insurers, but on the back end, increasing the deductible if you do file a claim. So that's kind of the shifting around that they're trying to do. That way we're not losing people on these roles, but so much as if you do have to file a claim, it is expensive. Now there's a bit of there's a bit of a back and forth that they're trying to do in all of the legislation. They're trying to balance things out so we can kind of maintain where we are. But and I'll get to the grand issue that's really been a shadow over all of this. But so there's that issue. They're trying to balance out the premiums to deductible scale. But then also they're setting up a $2 billion reinsurance fund, essentially to allow for insurance companies are able to then buy that insurance. So it's insurance for insurance companies. And that should help relieve some of the pressure for some of these insurance companies. It may not be enough. There are restrictions in it as well. But the main bill, HB 1 in the House and then Senate Bill 2 in the Senate, it does a lot. So one of the other things it does is it limits lawsuits against insurers by reducing the fees attorneys can recoup and making other changes. It prohibits insurers from refusing to write policies on homes that have roofs less than 15 years old and on older roofs if an inspection determines they still have at least 5 years of life. They also increase insurance company transparency to address concerns about their stability and financial practices. I would have had a proper update for you all yesterday. However, my laptop is not working, so I have IT working on it. I know. The timing couldn't have been worse. I have IT working on it, and I'll have an update for you all later today. If I have to go to the public library, I'll figure it out. So that's on that issue. And the second issue is on roofing. So we have the property insurance bill that I just discussed, and then we have the roofing bill. The roofing bill is limited in scope, but they're hoping will do a lot. It changes the rate for roofs, and bear with me because I just became an expert on this overnight, but it changes the rate in which you have to get your roof replaced from 25% to 35%. In talking to Ben Bailey, it's pretty negligible in terms of what it's going to do. I've been working with his office closely to try to figure out what this may mean not only for the county and the county government, but also for our county citizens and residents here. And then it also changes the scope of how much of a roof needs to be replaced in terms of which scale they're going. So if they're going back from 2004 to 2007 or to current. So they're trying to play with the system to try to get things done. But again, to be quite clear, this is a special session. This really is not the appropriate venue for them to be dealing with or addressing this issue. This is something for a regular session. On top of that fact, this deal was struck Friday evening. Quite frankly, when usually it's something that should have been done weeks in advance. On top of that, it's set to end on Thursday, and there really isn't much room for public debate or comment or lobbying or citizen input. So the process in and of itself is not great or acceptable. On top of that fact, what they're able to do really to solve any of these issues is it's really hard to say. What all these insurance companies are simply saying is that Florida is becoming uninsurable, quite simply put, because of weather and wildfires, because of climate change. It's becoming
Because of trial attorneys. Let's be honest.
and that as well, and that's the other issue that they've talked about as well in terms of the fraud that's taken up. So on that front, this is less legislative and more on the executive branch. CFO Jimmy Petronis, in a number of statements over the last couple of days, has made clear that his office is working aggressively to start hunting down trial attorneys that are going after and being predatory to citizens. And I quote, "At best, they are gaming the system to make a profit. At worst, they are breaking the law. Either way, they should all be disbarred. Also, they should know that the detectives within my department are working very hard to send them to jail." So he's calling on the State Bar Association to go after these attorneys aggressively. He's also calling on the State Bar Association to develop new programs and educational opportunities for attorneys to implement better practices. So on all scopes of the property insurance and housing issues, the legislature is trying to get things done. However, again, the concern is that it might be a little too late at this point, given what's happening to the system itself. One of the other things of note is that Florida represents 9% of the nation's total property insurance claims, but 79% of the litigation, at least. So that is a massive.
Because of our wonderful legislature won't address the real root of the problem. And one of the ways that insurers can assist in solving the problem is put a damn adjuster out on every daggum job. Every time a roof comes in, all they have to do is prove 25% or more needs to be done. They get a full roof, deductible paid, and the insurance companies get stuck with it. I could probably find a roofing company to come out and do the same thing to my roof, but there's not a dang thing wrong with it.
Right.
It's 18 years old.
Right. So one of the other issues that is going to be brought up and hopefully funded this year is a program that essentially hardens and improves the conditions of Florida residents' homes. It is a program that the state had back in 2006, but hadn't been funded since then. It was created in 2004, but hadn't been funded since 2006. So they're restarting that program. They're going to fund it, which is great because that'll help with some of the insurance issues. On top of the fraud concerns, the insurance companies are also mentioning that when they're looking at the actuarial tables over the next 50 to 100 years or 20 years or so, the concern is about climate change, is one of the things that they're saying. So the short-term concern is the fraud that we're seeing in the abuse on the legal system and the litigation issues. And then the long-term issue is the wildfires and weather concerns that our state is going to have. So this fund is going to be helpful in that regard to help reduce some of that long-term concern that these insurance companies do have. All in all, to say, we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. It wouldn't be beyond me that this special session could be extended as well, especially now that they've added the condo deal in it as well. I will also make note of it just because it's one of those things that was brought up before, talked about recently. It's been on pause, but as we saw last special session, things can just come up. The governor has previously talked about expanding this special session to include constitutional carry. We're not exactly sure if that's still going to happen. He sounded ambivalent in the last couple of public speaking events when he was asked about it. We'll have to see if that is expanded to include this special session as well. So that is the state updates that I have. I can take questions or concerns or comments.
You heard mine.
Compliments.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I would just say on the roofing thing. So I believe the way the statutes allow now, you can go up to 4 years after a wind event. I believe. Are you aware of that? I believe you can, statute of limitations, you can go.
It's about 4. I know
Yeah, I
this
think-
Irma thing, they started putting out the advertisers really heavy.
I mean, if you have damage from a wind event, 4 years, I mean, you should know in less than 4 years if you've got a problem. I would say the low-hanging fruit is to cut that in half to 2 years, or even a year.
Right.
But if you want to be generous, if you don't know you have a roof problem after 2 years after a major event, then at some point that's going to be on a homeowner too. I mean, if there's a major wind event and I notice there's a problem with my shingles, I just call up an inspection. You can get a home inspector, to come out there and pay him, check my roof and make sure it's okay. Make your claim, but to make a claim 4 years after a wind event and then try to tie it back to a wind event that happened 4 years previously, that's a big part of the problem. It's just the length of time you get. Now, I believe homeowners have a right, to make a claim. They're paying their premiums. But 4 years to me that's kind of, I always talk about the reasonable test. That's kind of unreasonable. If you can't figure out you've got a roof problem after a storm just blew through in at least the first 2 years, then you probably don't have a problem. I don't know. There's got to be some type of simple reform to help cut down. And the biggest thing is most of these roofs are being replaced not because they failed or because the person has roof leaks. It's because they were solicited. Mm-hmm. They got a knock on a door and a door knocker left. Want a free roof? You don't pay anything. Call us. And that's the root cause of the claims. It's not because homeowners are calling because their roof has failed and it's leaking. Right. So, but obviously they tried to reform that, and I guess because of First Amendment rights, you're allowed to solicit people. But I mean, that's where the claims are coming from. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I'm sure if someone did a tally on that stuff, that's 99% is solicitation. Right. So I don't know, the legislature needs to put their heads together here and come up with some real reforms, not this nipping at the edges. We're not going to solve the problem. I think there was 4 or 5 major carriers just went insolvent.
Yeah. And one of them reduced their rolls by about 80,000 residents, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you're going to have to go into the state pool. You're going to pay higher premiums. Yeah. They're not going to go any lower. And guess what? Just like we have a hurricane surcharge on our insurance renewals every year, there's going to be another surcharge to pay for that state insurance fund. It's going to be you're going to get your hurricane surcharge. I get my premium on my entire house is about $2,000 for the renewal. I thank God I've had the same insurance company for 23 years. The hurricane surcharge on top of that is $400. So that's almost 25% of my base premium to cover my entire house to have it rebuilt.
Right.
Think about that. There will be a surcharge to fill. The state cannot, bear the cost without backfilling that fund. And you'll see another $300 or $400 state of Florida insurance surcharge to go to their fund. I mean, that's where it's going to go. I mean, it's real concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't disagree with any of that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir.
Oh, I do have some more.
Go ahead.
So one of the other things, the Hometown Heroes bill was announced by the governor. I know that was an issue that we were talking about. Again, one of those updates I would have provided, but the laptop is kaput. So that is going to be affecting first responders, nurses, teachers. Basically, if you're a public government official, then you're going to be added into that. We'll have to wait and see exactly how that's going to play out in terms of the housing system, the housing market that we have in the state of Florida. I mean, part of a lot of the consternation that you were talking about, Commissioner, has been played out both from representatives and their meetings that they've had in their local districts, but also just in terms of what they're talking about now during the special session, in the last special session, about the housing crisis, again, catastrophe, I should say, in the state of Florida, because that is another one of those issues. So the Hometown Heroes Down Payment Act bill should be helpful. Again, the concern is that it might increase the inflation spiral that we're seeing in terms of down payments being extraordinary in terms of what's happening in the market as well. It is expected that this property insurance issue and other housing issues are going to be talked about in 2023 at that legislative session in 2023. However, it is likely that they're going to have to come back again sometime in August or September, depending on the hurricane season that we have. I think everyone is praying and hoping more than any other time before that we're going to have a very calm hurricane season, because if we don't, it's going to be extraordinary on the property insurance side, but then also on the housing side as well. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens on that, but they are expected to do that as well. One other housekeeping note, it has been expected enough for me to say that we're looking at another special session sometime in June. I'm not exactly sure when, but we'll have to wait and see as well. So that's on the state side. On the federal side, if I may real quick, we are 167 days before the 2022 midterm elections, and the Congress is at a standstill. To say the least. There has been some discussion from Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema that they may do something on prescription drugs, that they may do something on increasing taxes on top income earners in the country to then reduce the deficit. There's been other discussions about other things that were in the Build Back Better bill to help increase energy independence. However, there is no bill text, there's no bill language, and we're going into the summer where there usually is no kind of legislative achievements at all. So on that front, I just wanted to make that clear. And then just so much as we've talked about it before, the Congress did move forward with a Ukraine package of military aid towards the country, military aid and support. So that is still ongoing as well, and that is taking up a lot of the bandwidth in terms of what's happening in the Congress as well. So I'll have to wait and see.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, on the special session in June, what's on the agenda?
We don't know. We just know that it's been talked about enough that it's apparently going to happen. Essentially what's happened is that the governor's office over the last couple of months has the authority to call special sessions and is using that authority.
Okay, but we just don't know what.
We have no idea. We just know that.
Usually there's a call for a special session when there's something at issue.
Yeah. We just know that one is coming.
That takes me back to the whole thing of they didn't get this insurance thing even started really until Friday afternoon, because I was scheduled to go up there this week. And it's like, I called up there to some people in the industry and I said, will I be spinning the wheels? And they said, yeah, you'll be wasting your time, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're going to address. And because there's not really good opportunity for public input, you're not probably going to get to talk to too many people.
Right. Well, yeah, and I hate being blindsided by this stuff, because then we're operating from behind.
Right.
And the sooner we understand what they're going to discuss, we may want to have a position on something.
Right.
And not knowing, and then they have these sessions, and before you know it, we meet every other week. We might be missing something where we can meet as a board.
Right.
And things slip through. But anyway, you'll keep us posted.
I will keep you posted as best I can.
And I was reading some of the language on the Hometown Heroes, and the sheriff may want to, I'm sure he's tuned into this because this has been a major issue for him. So I understand now there's some implementing language. They allow up to $25,000 in down payment assistance secured by a second mortgage, no interest, that's forgivable or something. Are you aware if this language is out there, the implementation language? Because that's what I'm hearing.
I will double check that specifically, and I can send an update to the board on that.
Yeah, and we'll copy the sheriff. I know it's been a big concern. I had mentioned at a forum that we had held by the Board of Realtors, I mentioned that program, but at the time, I think it was $100 million was set aside, but no language to actually how to spend it. So he may want to get in as soon as possible with his staff and all the other people who qualify.
Right.
You mentioned they put public officials on there?
Not public officials like nurses, teachers.
Oh, I thought you said elected officials.
No, oh, no.
That seems
no,
kind of crazy.
More like
Public safety would fall.
Yeah,
under
public-
that.
Oh, okay, all right.
Maybe.
yeah.
Glad I heard.
Yeah, sorry to be to be clear. Yeah, it's
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks, sir.
Anyone else? Any other good news?
I mean, I will say on the federal side, our federal team is working hard in terms of the appropriations process going forward in the Congress, even though there's a lot going on with the budget and in terms of the process with a lot of the spending that's happening towards Ukraine. We are still working our way through the process through our appropriations requests, our earmark requests. So that is good news on that front. So we're still, we don't want to get too excited yet, but we're waiting to see exactly what happens on that front. One other thing, there was a COVID relief, there was a COVID test to treat bill request that the White House was trying to get through the Congress. That has stalled as well. That was to get new therapeutics and new vaccines through the Congress. That funding has been stalled, so we'll wait again and to see if that happens or gets through as well, but it's unlikely as well. So we'll wait and see.
Very good.
Any other issues?
Quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Senator Manchin want to try to maybe make some moves to try to, did you really say decrease the deficit?
I did say that. It is one of those things that given inflation, given the world, the war in Ukraine, the supply chain issues that we're seeing, I think everyone's starting to realize that we don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of our debt and deficit. It is also an issue that they're hoping that increasing taxes on the 1%, the top earners in the country, that they can then use that funds to help reduce the deficit so that going forward there'll be a lot more room.
Okay, I have real issues with not you,
right,
but with the wording, because the whole point is reducing the deficit. How about reducing the spending? That's how you reduce the deficit. Not by increasing the, I'm all for people paying their fair share, and if the people at the top could pay more and not experience pain and and they can work a formula out, I'm good with that. But it's not a revenue issue. I just don't understand how they don't get that, All the other spending is frivolous except for their piece of the pie. Everybody's got to experience some pain. And right now we're fighting for every dollar we can because everybody else is. Right. But if there was across the board, hey, you know what? Our programs are shutting down. We just don't have the money to spend.
Right.
Because interest on the debt is going to be all we can afford.
Right.
What is that day? Can you research that for me? Is that next year? Is it the year after? When will all of the revenue we take in this country equal the interest on the debt? No principal, no other programs, nothing. Just the interest on the debt.
I don't think the Federal Reserve would ever let it get that far, to be clear. However, the way things are going, who knows if they have a choice. I think the concern is, and I've mentioned this before, we don't have a political consensus on how to manage the budget. We don't.
We don't have a political consensus on how to, well, you know what? What's been a surprise is the anti-Russian effort. Go figure that we actually come together on one subject for the first time in forever, that 80 or 90% of the Congress comes together on that one issue. But they couldn't figure it out on a medical issue. They couldn't figure it out on, there are so many other things going on that the government in the 50s and 60s and 70s would have gone in a back room, because they're allowed to do that, and said, you know what, what's best for the country? Let's figure this plan out. We're all going to go out together, hand in hand, and we're going to sell this to the American people because we know what's best to make sure that this country is moving in the right direction, because we're patriots first. Patriots first. Yeah, I know. You're the messenger.
Preaching to the choir.
I know. It's just so frustrating.
It is frustrating. I think of what hope there is that, given the situation in Russia and Ukraine, which I know for some seems so far away, but it does have real effects here, as we're seeing with inflation, with the energy prices, with the pending food prices that are coming down the pipe, with what's happening in there.
We've talked about it, and Ukraine is a key location, not just for moving energy, but also for the fact that it is truly the breadbasket for that side of the world. And it's going to affect those underprivileged countries, and we're going to have famine. Right. We're going to have starvation. We're going to have problems of global significance.
Right.
Because one man had a tantrum.
Unfortunately, yes. I think people neglect that Ukraine really is the breadbasket of not just Europe, but really Eurasia. Luckily, we in America here are blessed with our agriculture and our country. But Ukraine's flag is the blue is the sky and the yellow is the wheat fields, because they really are the breadbasket of Europe and Eurasia. So it's not necessarily there's enough global supply of food to feed everyone. The problem is going to be the price and transporting it because of the price of gas as well. That's going to be a massive issue. There's been talks in Europe right now about trying to set up some type of corridor along the Black Sea to transport food products from some of the ports in Ukraine and bring it to the countries that need it, so that way we can kind of reduce some of the pressure. The problem, of course, is hoping that the Russians don't attack it. So, they're trying to work out a deal now to get that figured out. But that kind of encapsulates a lot of the concerns that we're having. With that said, I think the hope that we have now in terms of getting our fiscal house in order is that over the next couple of months, as we go towards the midterms, as things get situated in Ukraine and Russia, that there can be an understanding that we need to get our fiscal house in order if we're prepared to take on this new threat. Both in what Russia's doing, but also in China. Because, as I've mentioned before, it looks like we are in a second Cold War, that we're having to deal with two threats on two fronts. President Biden yesterday made a historic announcement that we would be prepared to defend Taiwan in the event of something like that happening, that China tries to take it over, which one of those issues that seems far away. Taiwan produces 80% of the microchips that are in our phones and cars. So all of these international concerns may seem far away, even in Charlotte County, but they have real-world impacts in terms of what's happening here, both in our gas stations, grocery stores, and cars. So I really do hope that they get we get our fiscal house in order. But in terms of a lot of bipartisan, wanting to do that, not really.
I really appreciate that. You always teach me something when we get together or when you're here and filling us in. So I just want to switch gears really quick. When Greg Burns was here last time, we talked about the fact that even if we went to Washington, we'd wind up sitting in his office on a Zoom or a Teams or some sort of a box.
Right.
But I really think that, and I would hope I see head nods, that you would start basically a virtual trip to Washington with this commission every single week. Pick an agency, pick an issue, pick a commissioner, get us up to speed, have Greg set up a meeting, and then we'll sit in front of the computer and have that meeting. Let's make them tired of hearing from Charlotte County. That's my mission.
Right.
I mean, guys, what do you think? We don't have to get on a plane. We don't have to move around. We can figure out, when you want to, Army Corps. We have a lot of things. We go up there, and it's like, oh yeah, you guys are back. How many months has it been? Has it been a year already? No. We were talking on this 3 weeks ago. Where are we now? Let's just keep.
Let's get a list of the issues.
Yeah,
right?
but I'm just saying,
start with a list of issues and then divvy them up and see what, then go from there.
Right. Well, here's the thing. They've created these rules of engagement. Let's take advantage of them.
Understood.
Because we're not going up there, so let's just advocate from our desks, face to face.
Is FACT still looking at something possibly in October?
I'll be up in June, too. I need to carry anything.
Yeah, so, I think we adopted our legislative agenda. We got to make sure that we're sticking to the script, and
Right.
we don't go off script, so we're consistent with our messaging.
Absolutely.
We don't want to go off message. And the other thing is, if we try to get with these agents with higher frequency, when are they just going to tune us out? In other words, are we going to overwhelm them and say, oh, it's those guys again, how many times can they ask us for the same thing, where it becomes not productive?
Well, I agree, but that's where Greg comes in and understands what the balance is, but he was not against it. He said, yeah, that's actually a good,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
let's be the ones who do it. Now, nobody else is doing it, let's be the ones who do it. So, thank you.
That's all I've got.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. All right, with that, we'll suspend comments and we'll go back to public input. And sir, I understand you wanted to come forward? Yes, you?
Yeah.
Yes. She told us that you were trying to park the car, so we suspended public input so we could come back to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Robin Foster. I live in Placida. And I'll tell you what, after listening to all this discussion, this is something that seems very insignificant.
Don't tell me your garbage.
And it's on the lighter side, but I'm here to talk about dedicated outdoor pickleball courts. And I was here about 1.5 years, 2 years ago before COVID hit and all the variants. And now we got the monkey bumps, and we'll probably have the camel humps before it's all over. So, it's I've been watching the tension and the pressure build out here on these multi-use courts in the southwest Charlotte, Cape Hayes area. We've got the dedicated courts up in Sarasota at the Inglewood facility, and we've got them over in Punta Gorda, but we've really got nothing on the south and on the west, Charlotte and Cape Hayes area. And the problem is we're getting a lot of tension between the pickleball players and the tennis players. I got nothing against tennis players. I play tennis myself. If I can find 3 more fat guys to lob the ball back and forth over the net, then I'll play tennis. But the problem is that coveted 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. playtime before that hot summer Florida sun comes out and starts burning holes through everything. And that's pretty much taken up by the tennis players because they've been here. Let's face it, they've been here long before the pickleball game came to town. So that seems to be a big issue. Plus the pickleball lines on the courts are degraded because it's a lesser line than what the tennis courts have. So they're fading. Some of the pickleball players come in and take chalk and try to mark them a little bit better, and that ticks off some of the tennis players because that's throwing them off and everything. But really, it's that time frame, that coveted 6 to 10 a.m. time frame, and then you throw in that the summer camp, the 10 weeks of summer camp, and that takes away from more of the play time for the pickleball players indoors, and that throws them back outside. So now you've got more competition for that. And it seems to me if you got 2 tennis courts over off San Casa in the Ann and Chuck Deaver Recreation Center, and you could easily convert those since you have the infrastructure already there, the court and the fencing and everything, you could easily convert those to 8 dedicated pickleball courts. That would go a long way in diffusing the tension and the pressure between tennis players and pickleball players at these other courts that are multi-designated. And the tennis players got 4 courts at Tringali, and
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Oh.
But that's why I was beeping at you. I've made some notes here, and I'll do some research. And if you can send me an email,
okay,
go on to Charlotte County BCC and send me an email. I'll get back in touch with you so I can update you.
Okay, I'll do that then. And I know about the 2024.
Very good.
Courts going in,
Thank you.
But that's 2
Yes,
years
sir.
away.
Yes, sir.
There could be a lot more flying in the air besides tennis balls.
Okay, I have to cut you off. I'm sorry.
All right.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know there's not a lot of people here, but I can't set precedent for. Yes. Go ahead, ma'am.
May I speak?
Yes, ma'am. You can pull that microphone down so we can hear you.
Yes, my name is Jessie Brill, and I've lived in Charlotte County in Englewood for the past 20 years. And in 20 years, I'm over 70, and I'm telling you, a lot more needs to be done with regard to taxes. And I just got my insurance bill, and I nearly passed out. It was $400 more than last year. I'm counting all my nickels and dimes. We're going to be getting a tax bill in November, and I can't imagine what that's going to be, but a lot more needs to be done for people over 70. It's not enough. Gas is up to $5, and it's just very difficult to get through, especially when you have all these utility bills that are going up, and there's no end to this. I feel like I'm being taxed to death. Please help people over 70. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And with that, we will close public input and go to Ms. Nolan.
I just had one thing. Since I was here in 2005 when we negotiated the Babcock water use permit, I wanted to answer your question, Commissioner Constance. The permit expires in 2031. The purchase and sale agreement said it was the initial application was anticipated to be for 10 MGD. For some reason, I think Mr. Watson is correct that the actual permit said 5 MGD, but I'll go back and confirm the amount that it's for. But I know we have to show a demonstrated need and a demand in order to get it. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to respond to the citizen here. Next Wednesday at 1 p.m. is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting over at Centennial Park. I'm the board's liaison on that. When your email comes in to the chairman, Hector, if you can pick up on that, get it out to Tommy Scott, the director. I'll be there at that meeting. Hopefully, maybe we can get some kind of an answer from Community Services as to your request and see where we go from there. Just wanted to share that with you. 1 p.m. out at Centennial Park on the 1st, Wednesday the 1st. That's all I had, sir.
Did you have something? You're in the queue.
No.
Okay. I didn't take you out. I just want to make sure.
I'm out.
All right. Commissioner Constance.
I don't really have a whole lot other than to say I really appreciate, that, Monday, this weekend, again, they're putting the flags in at Lashley Park from the Punta Gorda Rotary to commemorate the Memorial Day weekend. And I know there's a lot of activities on Monday, and I just hope that our citizens can get to that location as well as many of the other veterans locations to honor and pay respect and show that you really understand that this is such an important part of the birth of this nation and the continuation of keeping us free. And you see everything else that's going on in the world and how horrific it is to live in some other places, and we take for granted just the fact that we can walk down the street and not fear for our lives and, enjoy bright sunshine and clean air and fresh water and, smiling, happy people that live with us in this great nation. So, I'm just very appreciative, and I know this board's very appreciative, and just really, I had an uncle that served in World War II, and fortunately he came home, but he had a great deal of influence on me, and why I'm sitting in this chair today. So I just think it's important that we remember. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner DeSalle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of Mosaic, is staff sending another member? I think Sean went to the last public workshop. Okay, so we are sending a member of staff to go there. Okay, just wanted to get that on the record. I know I went to one physically, but they televise them. I watched the last one live stream, so anybody who wants to watch them, we have access to do that. I brought this up a couple of months ago about a parking garage at the event center, and we might be able to work with the city on as far as a joint program. Well, lo and behold, they had a meeting the other day and identified that the need for parking. They did a downtown parking study. They identified 2 county properties, the courthouse and the event center. So I guess timing's everything. So they have a demonstrated need. We had a need to host bigger events. There's always been a parking problem, I think, for certain events at the event center. It was a sales tax project, a parking garage, but got bumped off. This may be an opportunity. I called the mayor on break just to confirm the conversation they had about the need study and, in the event center. I think this would make a great joint workshop discussion. There's, obviously a mutual potential collaboration on a parking garage there where the city has skin in the game and the county, and it may benefit everybody. So I just wanted to throw that out there to staff, because, like I said, it's something we can work on jointly, see where it goes. And Mr. Constance.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great idea, and I think I wouldn't do a work. You're talking about with the city to do a workshop?
Yeah.
I mean, I would do a meeting with the city. I don't know that,
Well, a meeting, workshop, whatever.
There are a few other things that we can discuss, like the 41 overlay, and, there's at least three or four other things that have been sitting out there. And I know that we're about to meet with Northport. We haven't met with Punta Gorda in forever. So I'm fully on board.
Yeah, and she mentioned a couple of streets there that a light at the Home Depot, we talk about in the MPO, and the other street, that other one, it was like an off street off Acquiesta.
Red Esplanade.
No, you're talking about Baynard.
Baynard. She wanted to talk about
actually,
Baynard.
Rio Villa.
Rio Villa, but it's Baynard, yeah. So she brought up a couple items, so I just give staff maybe some head nods to reach out to them and see if we can come up with an agenda, with some of those possibilities. So, Neighbors Giblin. So I sit on the Affordable Housing Committee, and a couple times a year I'm required by statute to sit in on a 1.5-hour Florida Housing Coalition Zoom meeting, and we talk about in our region, issues that are going on with affordable housing. So, and I've been questioning this for a while, but the ARPA money. I'm reading through FAC all the news and notes. All these other counties are using the ARPA money to help with affordable housing, but we seem to be so restricted in our use of funds. So Neighbors Giblin came out with, based on the latest U.S. Treasury guidelines, I think about a month ago, and Jeanette sent it to all the commissioners, I think, yesterday. I asked her to get that to everybody. It looks like the ARPA funds now can be used in a much broader way to address affordable housing. So I want to have staff, after we read if we have any questions, but we need to really understand where we can use this money and where it would help, because what we thought then is different now. We should at least understand where we can allocate those funds. I asked Carrie Walsh about homelessness in Charlotte County, because look at what's happened over the last 2 years, and she sent me a summary. Right now, there's an actual decrease in literally homeless, meaning people living on the street, but an increase in people who are homeless that are living, they call it couch surfing. They're homeless but not on the street. They still have a roof over their head, but they're going from place to place. That number has increased. So according to Charlotte County Public Schools, there were 396 homeless students in 2021. This year, it went up to 490. So we're approaching almost 500 homeless students, essentially couch surfing, hotel room, cars, wherever they can stay. And I'm worried that we're going to begin to see over the next 6 months those homeless numbers start to creep up. A lot of the foreclosure, forbearance, all those things are going to start to disappear. And I don't want to get caught, behind the 8 ball. I just figured I would throw that out right now, just to understand what services may be required from Charlotte County, because it all comes back to us. Increase in homelessness, they're going to need programs that we offer through community services and things like that. So we may start to see those things trend up, and that's why I think it's important we understand how we can use those ARPA funds to help maybe mitigate or offset some of these things through assistance programs and funding up some of those things from where our current levels are. But that's going to be a deep dive for staff to bring something back to the board so we can understand those numbers a little bit better. But I am concerned about homelessness in Charlotte County, and some of these initial numbers, which only go through January, are showing trends, good in one direction but bad in another. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. And also the clerk's report, they're gone. I just skimmed through this. I mean, to really summarize all this in 8 or 9 and 10 pages, you did a great job. And I love the last page because I went right to look for the debt, and they have this, this chart right here, very easy to understand. It gives our net position, financial position, all summary, all in a nutshell, easy to understand where we are, where we've been, and where we're going, and the dollar, right? So here's what's interesting. So Charlotte County, this is the ad valorem dollar, not MSTU, MSBU. But holding true, about 42% goes to Charlotte County Schools, 32% of the ad valorem dollar go to the sheriff. Charlotte County, countywide, us, we're 15.61% of the dollar. And think about how much we do with 15.61% of the ad valorem dollar. Again, we still have MSBU, but just from an ad valorem perspective, it's amazing the amount of responsibility we have for infrastructure and how costly those things are. And we're only getting less than 16% of the ad valorem dollar. And then, the rest are some miscellaneous things. But it's a great snapshot. I think she said this was the first time they put this out. It was a really good read and a really good job. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Deutsch.
Can I just make a comment on that?
Yes.
Yes, outstanding. This is a nice summary for the taxpayers because it's really compact and it hits all the bases, and I think you did a fantastic job. I meant to say something. Thank you.
Sir?
Obviously, everyone knows it's Memorial Day weekend, and there's it's interesting, and I think we've seen a public understanding of the number of veterans in the community and how veteran-friendly Charlotte County is. They were talking on the radio early this morning about the flags over at Lashley Park being put in. And the announcer on the radio station says, well, you know, we're really a veteran-friendly community, and we have a lot of veterans here. And it was sort of good to hear that. But let me just highlight a few of the events that may be of interest. Memorial Day, which officially is a Monday, and the veterans, Charlotte County Veterans Council, we make some real serious efforts to try and coordinate the activities. So if someone is so disposed to want to try and make 5 or 6 events in one day, they can. I think my record's been 4, and I'm not sure I'm going to surpass that this year. But the Charlotte County Memorial Day program will take place at the gazebo by the replica of the Vietnam Wall at 10 a.m. Memorial Day, the 30th. It falls on the right day this year, traditionally. And at 11 a.m., Post 103, which is over in Punta Gorda, American Legion Post is having a program. About noon, the museum is going to be starting their program. And about 2 p.m., Post 110 is having a program over here on Harbor Boulevard. 2 of them are offering refreshments to the guests. I'm not going to tell you which 2, so you'll have to show up and find out. But I thought I'd share that with you. And there's a myriad of activities throughout the weekend involving fire department, the sheriff's office. Riverwood is having a Memorial Day event Friday, actually, and they're going to be dedicating that flagpole. We had some issues getting that flagpole up, as you recall. So it's a special weekend. It's a special day, and Charlotte County is a special place to be when we think of and revere the veterans who have laid down their lives and their sacrifice for us. So thank you. Stay safe. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flores.
Yes, I wanted to add, we have scheduled for the July 19th workshop to give the board hopefully a comprehensive report on ARPA funding and the use of the funds. So if anything comes in piecemeal, we'll make sure to get that to you.
Mr. Chair, I left out one item, if I may.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flores.
Okay. I've been talking about this with a number of groups, and to the best of my knowledge, on June 14th, we're going to be having our first County Flag Day ceremony in Charlotte County. And we felt it appropriate to have it on Flag Day. And I've had them arrange the time because they would like to have as many commissioners there as possibly could make it. Unfortunately, June 14th is a Tuesday and a commission day like today. But I just wanted, depending on what happens with the agenda and if it could work out that if we could break at 11:45 and everybody could make it, they'd love to have you there. It's going to be, it's probably going to be about a 35, 40-minute program. It's going to be on Harbor Boulevard. This time of the year, it's only a 10-minute ride. So the council and the American Legion Post 110 wanted to make sure that all commissioners were invited and welcome. And depending on our agenda, Mr. Chair, it'll be at noon on the next Tuesday meeting. Thank you much.
Thank you. Commissioner Constance, I said you in the queue too.
I think it was to make the comment that I made.
Okay, very good. All right, well, I have nothing further. So with that, we will go into a short recess and come back for 2 o'clock. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are going into the actual land use portion of our county commission meeting. And I'm just signing a couple documents here. Set those up for you, Natalie. And with that, we'll open up our public input portion on our consent agenda items for land use. Anyone wishing to speak on any of the consent items, UA1 through UA4, UA5 was deleted. You may come forward, state your name for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak on the consent agenda items? Okay, I see no one coming forward. So with that, gentlemen, I'll start with Commissioner Doherty. Both, do you have anything to pull?
No, sir.
Commissioner Constance?
Nothing to pull, sir.
Commissioner DeSalle?
Nothing to pull, sir.
Oh, and I don't either. So I will entertain a motion on consent.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? Is there objection to the motion? Hearing no objection, they pass unanimously, and we will go into our regular land use items. And I will turn it over to Mr. Cullinan. And you, and anybody else who's given testimony today, also please rise and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please say, I do.
Very good. Thank you.
This is quasi-judicial.
I'm Commissioner Doherty.
Mr. Chairman, I had my monthly staff briefing with Community Development, the Attorney's Office, and filed my paperwork on this item this morning.
Thank you, Commissioner Constance.
I have nothing to disclose, sir. I'll be hearing all evidence for the first time.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSalle.
This will be a first. I have nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Deutsch.
I have my meeting filed the paperwork.
I have nothing to disclose. So with that, we will go back to you, sir.
Thank you, Sean Cullen, Planning Zoning Official. I have been sworn. At this time, I'd like to offer myself in as an expert in planning and zoning matters. I have over 10 years of experience being the Planning and Zoning Official for Charlotte County, and hereby respectfully request to be deemed an expert.
Without objection from the board.
Thank you. The first item before you is a request for a preliminary plat for Babcock Property Holdings, LLC. This is for a subdivision to be named Babcock Ranch Community Spine Roads DD 15-17. And once again, I will reiterate until they change their naming convention they need to change their naming convention. This is approximately 30 acres. This is located within the Babcock Ranch DRI. Here is the high aerial, mid-range, and the aerial location map. As you can see, this is moving into their increment 2. This is just above the Lee County border. Again, you can see the subject property on the location map. Zoning designation is Babcock Overlay Zoning District, and the future land use map designation is Babcock Mixed Use. This is the 1,000-foot buffer notification map, the proposed changes, and those proposed changes overlaid onto the aerial. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant has a representative present.
They do. Commissioner Deutsch.
I just have a question of interest, but only because I've never run it before. When the area of notification goes into another county, do we still have the effort and are responsible for notifying the people, in this case in Lee County?
That's a good question. No, we don't, because we don't have access to their databases for their citizens.
I was just wanting to stay with the heart of the intent of what we want to do. Might it be appropriate then that we would advise Lee County of those houses and leave it up to them to do it? It might be a good idea to think of in the future. And or with Sarasota on the other end in Englewood when that would come to pass.
Yes, sir, we can definitely do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought Joe would like that too.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Rob Burnson, Big W Law, here on behalf of the applicant. We accept Sean as an expert for purposes of this hearing and the next one. This is just basically the roadways. There's no physical development other than the roadways associated with this plat. This does provide the access into increment 2, which will be moving forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Are there any questions of the applicant? Good.
How many increments are there, Mr. Burnson?
Currently, there's 2 approved increments.
I know that. How many total?
We are coming in, we have a pre-application for increment 3 tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon. So there would be coming in for increment 3, which should be the balance of the project.
In the DO, there are no maximum number of increments. It's kind of broken it up into 3 currently, but there's nothing saying that they couldn't further 3 into a 4 or 5th, or just shrink down the sizes.
There is language in the development order that does not allow more than half of the development to be in one increment, so there can't be 2, there has to be at least 3.
Okay, but I mean, so do you think there's just going to be 3, or will there be more?
I think there will be just 3.
They'll accomplish the final build-out with the final increment being the 3rd increment.
Right.
Okay.
Now, at this time, they may not entitle everything. They may come back at a later time to add more entitlement, but we're just starting the increment 3 process now.
But as far as the physical footprints go, one is being pretty much, it's almost finished up, and then, or it's pretty heavily done. 2 is now the door is open, and then as soon as that starts going, but the 3rd one will be it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Some clarification, the door on increment 2 has been kicked through.
Got it. Got it.
We had our
Blown open.
Does that qualify for an expert to say something like that?
That's an expert.
You're rethinking your endorsement? Okay.
We have our monthly meetings with county staff to get input from them and also provide them input. And we had that yesterday, first time since the pandemic, back out at Babcock Ranch. So we were able to take those that attended on a tour, and it's the first time I've been there probably in another 6 months, and it's just amazing each time you come, the amount of development that's happened.
True.
Thank you.
All right, if no further questions, we will open up the public input portion of the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may come forward, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I see no one rising. Move to close public input portion.
Motion second to close. Is there opposition? Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Doherty.
move approval of UB1.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Hearing none, is there opposition to the motion? Hearing no opposition, it passes unanimously. We will go to UB2, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And I will go with Commissioner Doherty.
Same thing, sir. I had my monthly staff briefing with Community Development and the Attorney's Office and filed my paperwork on this item this morning.
Commissioner Constance.
Nothing to report on this item, sir. I will be hearing all evidence for the first time.
Commissioner DeSalle.
Nothing to disclose.
And Commissioner Deutsch.
At my meeting, filed the paperwork.
I have nothing to disclose. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. Sean Cullen, Planning Zoning Official. I haven't sworn. This is also a preliminary plat request by Babcock Property Holdings, LLC. This is for Spine Road DD 8-10. This is approximately 193 acres, again, in the Babcock Ranch BRI. Here is the aerial location map, the high-end aerial. It's very busy out there. This is the proposed changes on the aerial. As you can see, again, some of these tracks here, such as tract I-76 and E-37, these will be for future development, but this is mostly just an infrastructure plat. Again, the location map. Zoning designation is Babcock Overlay Zoning District. Future land use map designation is Babcock Mixed Use. Here is the 1,000-foot buffer notification map. Proposed changes once again, and overlaid onto the aerial. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is present as well.
Very good. Any questions? All right. Mr. Burnson.
While he's coming up, I'll just reference that you see how there are missed pieces here. Those were done in other spine roads that are running north-south that have already been heard by you. That's where they'll be tying into.
Mr. Chairman, can you go back to a wider view? So, no, that's okay, yeah. So the spine road you're showing us now is toward the top, and the one that we just approved is going east-west, like a third of the way down.
Correct. So on this, where did it just go? This one, you can see this is a preliminary platted, the north-south spine road that this is where this ties into.
Right, but the one that we just approved is...
It is at the very bottom of it.
Bottom, yeah.
Correct. This north-south spine road had another stub out at the very bottom that tied into.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Burton.
Rob Burnson, Big W Law, here on behalf of the applicant. Basically say ditto to what I said before. This is just further development. As you can see, that stub out at the eastern end stubs out to increment 3, so ultimately that road would be able to continue into increment 3. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the applicant? All right. Thank you, sir. With that, we'll open up the public portion of the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may come forward. State your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I see no one rising. Move to close public input portion.
Motion second to close. Opposition to the motion? Hearing none, it passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Doherty.
move approval of UB2.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Hearing none, is there opposition to the motion? Hearing none, no opposition. It passes unanimously. For that, we'll go to UB3. Commissioner Doherty.
That's legislative, I believe, sir.
Is that,
Yeah,
oh, it's legislative. Never mind.
Everything else is legislative.
All right, cool. Ms. Shao.
Good afternoon. For the record, J. Shao, Community Development Department. Pursuant to Florida laws, Chapter 190, Community Development Districts, Nanar Homes LLC has submitted a petition CDD 2201 to the county to establish the Island Lake State Community Development District, CDD. So within Commission District 3. So I just want to let you know, last Friday, the petitioner's attorney emailed us and to let us know that the petitioner, which is Nanar Homes LLC, transferred its property at Island Lakes Estate CDD to its holding company, which is DRPFL6 LLC, on May 13th. And we have received an updated consent from the new entity, which is part of this petition package. So the proposed CDD contains approximately 169.69 acres, and it is located in the West County area. You can see on the screen, which is located south of St. Casa Drive, north and east of Pasita Road, which is County Road 775, and west of Winchester Boulevard in the Inglewood area and within Commission District 3. And the proposed CDD site is part of the revitalizing neighborhood on the 2050 framework map. And the property is designated as low-density residential on the 2030 future land use map by ordinance number 2008-089 with an annotation limiting the maximum residential development to 400 units of the density, and the portion of property located within the coastal high hazard area shall be limited to 3.5 units per acre. So the site is currently designated as residential multifamily 3.5. Actually, on January 23rd, 2018, a final plat was approved by the board for the subject property consisting of 178 single-family lots. So the proposed facilities and estimated costs are shown on the screen. Construction of stormwater system, water, wastewater facilities, landscaping, and irrigation will be funded by the developer and the proposed CDD. So construction of roadways will be funded by the developer. Furthermore, the proposed CDD will own, operate, and maintain the stormwater system and landscaping and irrigation. So all roadways within the proposed CDD will be owned, operated, and maintained by the homeowner associations for the proposed residential development. So the application also states that the proposed CDD may enter an agreement with the homeowners association for the operation and maintenance of the facilities that will remain in the ownership of the proposed CDD. So therefore, all of the major infrastructures for the subject property within the proposed CDD will be provided to one functional, interrelated community. So this establishment of the proposed CDD will prevent the general body of taxpayers within the county from bearing the burden of the installation of the infrastructure. Additionally, the maintenance of the certain facility within the development will be paid for by the CDD without imposing an additional burden on the local government. So staff from various departments and the Inglewood Water District have no objections to this proposed CDD. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shao. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, sir.
Hey, Mr. Chair, you got to let me in on the joke.
Sorry.
So, with this agreement, developer costs, are impact fees waived or they get credits? How does that work? Is that just a developer agreement negotiation?
Sean's the expert.
Sean Cullen, planning and zoning official. I have been sworn. Nope, it has no bearing on impact fees. This is just for a funding mechanism and maintenance entity for the infrastructure constructed within the residential development.
What about the off-site improvements? This is a pretty significant.
Those off-site improvements are required pursuant to, they're driven by their development, so that's not eligible. If they were doing above and beyond, for instance, when we have a water line put in, or if they're adding extra capacity that's not related directly to serving their development, then they would be eligible for impact fee credits.
Okay, so I'm looking at the roads that serve this development. Are they going to be required to put in decel lanes, turn lanes, off-site improvements?
Quite honestly, this is already built, or the majority of this, the access point and main roadway in is already built. It's already final platted in some areas out here. This is just the financing, the ability to pull the municipal bonds for the creation of the CDD in order to put in the rest of the infrastructure. And I don't believe there were any turn lanes that were required. I can pull up an aerial for you.
No,
There's no turn lanes out there.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're looking at 400 units. I just obviously want to confirm with all the other traffic issues we have here that whatever the developer's supposed to pay, it's been reviewed and it's paid, or the existing infrastructure is adequate to serve this particular.
Yes, sir. This has already been through preliminary plat, final DRC, all of those items. Their roadway infrastructure on Placida, if anything, has already been constructed.
So every time a unit's built, as far as the impact fees, they're going to pay whatever the impact fee rate is at the time they pull the permits.
Correct. We assess the fee for the amount that is in place at the time of the permit submittal. Right. So if somebody were to submit today, they would go by whatever it is today. If they submit, say, since you're discussing new impact fees, 180 days out, it'll be whatever is in place at that time, and we collect that prior to final inspections.
Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, is representative of the applicant here? I didn't know if you wanted to give testimony. Are you Ms. Earlywine?
I'm here on behalf of Mr. Earlywine. My name is Meredith Hammock.
Okay. And you have not been sworn, so could I ask you to please be sworn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please say I do.
I do.
Thank you so much. Now, if you'd restate your name for me, please.
Meredith Hammock with KE Law Group on behalf of the petitioner. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have above and beyond what's already been discussed, but no further presentation from us at this time.
Okay, very good. Did anybody have any questions? Well, thank you so much for being here then.
Thank you.
No questions at this point. All right, with that being done, we will open it up for public input. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may come forward, state your name for the record, and you will have up to 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I see no one rising. I move to close the public and portion of the public hearing.
Motion second to close. Is there opposition to the motion? Hearing none, that passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Move an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Charlotte County, Florida, pursuant to Chapter 190, Florida Statutes, amending Part 4, Municipal Service Benefit and Taxing Units, Chapter 4-3.5, Municipal Service Districts, by creating new Article 15, Island Lake Estates Community Development District, CDD, providing for new Section 4-3.5-201 Authority, providing for new Section 4-3.5202 District Name, providing for new Section 4.3.5203 District External Boundaries, providing for new Section 4-3.5-204 District Powers and Functions, providing for new Section 4-3.5-205 Board of Supervisors, providing for additional requirements, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there discussion or questions? Hearing none, I will entertain the vote. Then, is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, we will go to TCP-2201, revisions to the flu policy. Ms. Shao.
Good afternoon again. For the record, J. Shaw, Community Development Department, and staff initiated application TCP.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Why? Staff initiated it. Why?
Sean Cullen, Planning Zoning Official. I haven't sworn. This was instructed by administration in order to address some of the issues that we're having with some facilities as they're redeveloping and maybe changing location in order to be able to properly dispose of the property once it is completed.
That's just a too general statement. I need specifics.
One of the items dealt with Fire Station 10 out on Palm Island, where it has a public lands and facilities future land use map designation, which does not allow residential entitlements. And that was done back probably about the 1997 comp plan when it was made that future land use map designation. Therefore, now that it has relocated to the new facility, there is no inherent density on that piece of property, thereby making it not worth very much, not easily redeveloped. And so this will be able to, as well as other sites, be able to address that for these properties that the county owns that may have a future land use map designation of public lands and facilities, but may have an underlying zoning of residential single family.
So as a companion item to this, attachment to this item, do you have a complete listing of all of those locations that this will impact?
No, sir, because that would be on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the future land use of the facility is, what the underlying zoning of the facility might be.
Why can't we handle it on a case-by-case basis? I don't like a big, huge brush being painted. And I'm thinking right now about the Punta Gorda Library, which doesn't have any residential density on it, and now it will have residential density. It'll go back to whatever it was. Well, let me explain that one to me then.
Because that's within the city of Punta Gorda boundaries, and that would be whatever future land use and zoning the city has placed on it. That has no bearing, this has no bearing whatsoever on that because that falls under the city.
I still, you know, my concern about doing these kinds of things, it's countywide and you're just painting with a broad brush. And I don't know, I need a list of everything this is going to, you know, I get why you're interested in working on it to make it so that that property out on the island is habitable, but where are all the other ones that this will affect? Because I'm sure there's ones you're not thinking about that there'll be an unintended consequence. So is there no way to do the individual ones as we see fit? Do it just for the barrier island?
No, barrier islands are not eligible to submit for limited relief. And so this is the only way in West
This
County
is the
on the
step-
Bridges
is that
Barrier
what it
Islands
is?
in order to do
Yeah, this is a step we have to go through to even allow it, and then each one would have to come back to us for approval.
This is laying the groundwork to be able to do this. So this was one of those unintended consequences potentially of when, because it makes sense for all government facilities to have a governmental type of future land use map designation, but when those reach the end of their useful life and their surplus, it doesn't necessarily work out in the long run. So this was one of those unintended consequences, and we're just looking at some tools to address that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to summarize, so I understand in reading the staff report, you know, the purpose why we're doing what we're doing in the summary. But this is, again, the groundwork. Each time a property comes back, it individually has to come to this board if we want to transfer a unit, the density unit on it.
You are correct. It's not transfer density units. It's come for the land use change from public land facility to, for example, for the low, medium, high density residential. So the key point is it's because of the TDU program. So otherwise, without TDU program, without transfer density program in Charlotte County, we just come back to amend the land use, you know, public land and facility, you board finished use infrastructure to serve the citizen. So we don't want to use that anymore. It's surplus. We can sell that property. So we just need to come back for land use change.
I get that part. So this is for county-owned property only?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thank you, Mr.
So one more clarification. Thank you for bringing that up. So, but the point is that by doing this, you don't have to transfer density because when you make the land use change, it will already be part of that. It'll just be dropped on it because we've had this ordinance set up to do that.
Yeah,
as
this
opposed
part.
to change the land use designation and then we still have to find density to transfer onto it.
You are correct.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Now I got it. Okay.
Further questions? Are we good? Can we open to public input, or do you have anything else you want to No, she stopped you. You've got a whole presentation to do, so.
All 2 slides, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You have anything else? I'm ready to open the public input portion of the hearing, so.
I guess I have a presentation to explain a little bit more why we are doing this. Okay, thank you. So, and today's hearing is the transmittal hearing. And this is a text amendment to the county's comprehensive plan to revise flume policy, future land use, FLU policy 2.1.15, TDU waivers, to address future residential development on county-owned properties historically used for public services and facilities. And this is for countywide. So the reason for this proposed text amendment is that there are various land use amendments, the comprehensive plan rewrite, land development regulations changes since 1988, and the creation of the transfer of density rights in 1994, and after 2004, we call transfer density units program, and we had multiple revisions to that program. So the county unintentionally removed residential density rights from county-owned property, which when it developed such property for public facilities and services. The county now realized that as these public facilities and services are either relocated or no longer necessary to serve the citizens of Charlotte County, the county-owned properties should be redeveloped for residential uses, which were the intended use prior to development for public facilities and services. So it is staff's professional opinion that this application to amend from policy 2.1.15 TDU waivers is generally consistent with section 163.3177 for the laws and various goals, objectives, and policies established in the county's comprehensive plan and Charlotte County Code of Law and Ordinance and other applicable guidelines. Actually, this application was presented to Planning and Zoning Board on May 9th, and the Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval of transmittal of this text amendment to the DEO and other state review agencies for review and comment. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shao. I think you've already answered everybody's, but I'll ask again. All right. With that, we'll open up the public input portion of the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may come forward, state your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, move to close public hearing.
Second. Motion second to close. Opposition to the motion?
The reason is because there's no public here.
No public here. Understood. Still go through the process just in case somebody's listening outside. All right. Is there any opposition to that motion? Hearing none, it passes.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Doherty.
Move that we transmit petition TCP-22-01 to the Department of Economic Opportunity and other state review agencies for review and comment.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, is there opposition to the motion? Hearing no opposition to the motion, it passes unanimously. And with that, we have completed our work for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're adjourned.